Throwaway for obvious reasons. I, 24M, and my wife, 24, recently had our daughter in July. She is the best thing to ever happen to my wife and I, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have our little bundle of joy. She recently got sick while staying with her grandparents, my in-laws, while my wife and I took a trip for work. For context, my in-laws are really big into LifeWave X39. It's a patch that supposedly helps regrow stem cells by reflecting light rays back into your body, allowing your body to produce more stem cells to fight off diseases and sickness. If you ask me, it sounds like snake oil, and my wife agrees, calling it a pyramid scheme. The only way to get said patches is by spending well over $1,000, and then you're tasked with selling the patches yourself. It's essentially some multi-level marketing product, where the more patches you sell, the more money you make. Falling right in line with my wife's comparison to a pyramid scheme, but MLMs are somehow legal. Now, I've tried doing research on X39, and the only comments I've seen praise said product are brand new accounts never used before or after, or their entire profile is dedicated to shilling out for LifeWave X39. In my own research, they appear to just be overpriced stickers. They contain no medication, no special UV rays or anything of the sort. They're literally just an overpriced sticker with an air bubble. But my wife and I have made it very clear that we wanted no part in X39, nor did we want our daughter to have it. Even if it's fake, we wanted no part in it, and on the off chance it did something, I didn't want our daughter to be used as their lab rat or guinea pig. Now, before we left our daughter with my in-laws, we provided them with some infant medication, just in case she got sick. Can never be too safe, you know? Well, we returned home from the work trip early because our daughter wasn't getting any better, so we picked her up and went home. We were going to give her a bath, and in the process of taking her jacket off, we found an X39 patch on her arm. Upon finding it, we immediately called her parents and demanded to know why she had a patch on her. Her parents tried saying that it's safe for the baby. We even ordered the ones for ages 7 and younger. And that it's practically medication. Their words. Which still didn't answer our question. So my wife checked the go bag, and the Motrin we gave them was, while it was used, not used very much at all. Her parents tried claiming that someone else in their group, or whatever, gave it to their son and they got better in a week. Point is, we didn't buy it, nor did we care. We've made it abundantly clear that we wanted nothing to do with X39 and we didn't want our daughter to be a part of it. They failed to listen. My wife was on the phone with them for over an hour, and while I don't know the exact length the conversation went to, I know it at least ended with her screaming, "Going to see my fucking daughter again, and if you attempt to come to my house we will call the police," before hanging up. That was 3 days ago now, and we've had several missed calls from family members, her parents, her siblings, and even family friends, all saying that we overreacted, and they were just trying to help. Maybe we overreacted, but we wanted nothing to do with that, and despite making it clear, they went against our wishes and did it anyway. And instead of giving my daughter actual medication, they tried to give her some placebo patch. Her parents tried claiming that we're stopping them from seeing their only grandchild over something so small. But we did want to hear it. AITA? AITA has no consensus bot. OOP was NTA relevant comments. Linda Pandrix, I kinda think YTAH for leaving your sick baby to go out of town. OP, we didn't leave a sick baby to go out of town. We left her with her grandparents while she was fine. We only packed Motrin because, as I stated in my post, you can never be too careful. She got sick while we were out of town, not before. Mediocre key 4992. You say that like it's snake oil, like it's just as bad as the X39. Was it Advil and cough syrup? Or just a generic bottle that you wrote infant medication on? You expect us to believe that you gave them medication just in case she got sick and then she immediately got sick? Come on, this sounds like total BS. OP, her grandparents don't exactly have children medication laying around. We packed her Motrin, which I quite literally stated later in the post had you read it, not some generic bottle, or snake oil, and just as bad. Nor do they have the ability to really go anywhere. They live a good 30-40 minutes outside of any nearby town. The drive to and from her parents is a grand whole hour drive from where we live. And my wife and I quite literally work with sick people all the time. No, I'm not a doctor, nor do we have medical expertise. So my wife and I contracting something is usually pretty high. So we pack Motrin or whatever the store brand is that we'll buy, every time we left her with her grandparents for more than a day. Update 1. About a month ago I made this post ranting about my in-laws' weird obsession with a, for lack of a better term, cult regarding stem cell regeneration through patches, which clearly isn't a real thing. There's been some development on that end, and while I'm confident things will likely end here, I wanted to give a quick update for those who may have been curious. I'm writing this on the toilet at work, so don't mind the rushiness of it all. After my wife essentially cut ties with them and we all received a million phone calls and text messages from family and friends, things quieted down for about a week or two. We started having my sister watch our daughter instead, when we had to work. We haven't had another out-of-trip town since the initial post, however. Through those couple of weeks, we never really heard anything beyond a couple of supposed shit-talking posts on Facebook bitching about us, but I can't seem to find the posts. We thought things were probably, hopefully, going to end there, but boy were we wrong. And this is quite the jump from the last post. My wife and I were visited by CPS about 2 weeks ago or so, after they received concerning calls about supposed child abuse and negligence within the household. Of course, nothing like that happened, and the caseworker was very quick to see that. We had asked who reported her, and while she couldn't say, we had a suspicion it was from her parents. We were completely helpful and cooperative with the caseworker, and after she left that night, my wife called her mom up and asked her if she's the one who called CPS. Surprisingly, her mother took full accountability, but not so surprisingly, tried to spin it around in her favor, claiming that she did it for our own good, because our daughter was sick and she wasn't getting any better when she was there, so clearly we were doing something awful as parents. Kids get sick, it happens. But they're also extreme anti-vaxxers. Not just COVID, I mean everything. From even something as trivial as the flu shot. Yet, they're willing to shell out thousands of dollars for some supposed stem cell regeneration sticker. The fucking hypocrisy and irony in their bullshit is unmatched. My wife didn't really know how to react to that, so she basically told her mom to go fuck herself, and she wants nothing to do with her again. I know I saw a few comments on the last post saying maybe we shouldn't have cut them out entirely, but now I'm starting to question why we didn't cut them out years ago, before our daughter was even a thought in our heads. About a week after the first audit, my mother-in-law showed up to our house on my day off while my wife was at work, and essentially demanded to see our daughter, forcing her way into our home by pushing past my arm. When I told her to get the hell out of my house, she had no business matching in here like that. She essentially told me that I'm unfit to be a parent because I'm depriving my daughter of help she desperately needed, because she's clearly a very sick child. My daughter is perfectly healthy right now, and in fact, has had no stuffy nose and no high temperature. Nothing. I told my MIL straight up that she was batshit insane. I went off on her about how she lied to us, went against our wishes, had the audacity to call and lie to CPS, and then show up at our house unannounced, uninvited, and march herself inside, as well as everything about her X39 LifeWave bullshit. We argued there for a while, before I finally got so fed up. I told her to leave my house before I called the police. She stormed out of the house and in true Karen fashion, said this isn't over, before slamming my door. I immediately called my wife, who was of course irate. The following morning, we filed a restraining order at the courthouse from her mom and dad, because they're clearly not in their right mindset. The caseworker had to audit us a few more times as per their guidelines over the past 2 weeks, and yesterday was her last day, where she informed us that we're doing good and she's sorry for the trouble they caused. We kept her up to speed on the LifeWave shit, the showing up unannounced and the restraining order, and though she couldn't really take a side, she seemed apologetic. But my wife and I are pretty livid. We started looking at houses in another state to get as far away from her in-laws as possible. Our company has offices out there, so it's entirely possible we could just be transferred. So we're crossing our fingers that all goes well, the restraining order gets filed soon enough, and we'll get a place clear across the country, so that this will hopefully be my last update. Update 2. Hello everyone. Thank you for being so supportive. I've read some of the comments, though not all, far too many. And I know some of you have asked for updates, and so I wanted to give everyone an update for those still interested. Things aren't going to be as juicy in this post as the last two, but some new things have happened, so I'll just jump right in. After my in-laws called CPS on us for no discernible reasons other than we forbid them from seeing our daughter, things mostly quieted down. Some of you suggested that we should do more than just get a restraining order, so we bought some security cameras and had them installed all around our property, and our neighbors, who are pretty good friends of ours, was in the loop for the most part, and anytime we had to go somewhere, not only did we have video cameras recording every time someone entered our driveway displayed directly on our phones, our neighbors kept us updated too. She stopped coming around for the first few months since she called CPS on us, but just the month before last, as we were preparing to move, my in-laws somehow got word we planned on moving states and attempted to block our driveway as her dad tried blocking the front door. Not sure what their plan was there, because we have a back door and an extra side door leading from the kitchen, but I digress. Her mom blocked the driveway, stopping our U-Haul or car from leaving the property, and wouldn't budge, even after we told them we would call the police. They told us they'd move if we told them where we were moving to, But my wife told them that wasn't happening and they had 10 minutes to leave or we'd be calling the police. My neighbor came over during the commotion, but my in-laws still wouldn't budge. My daughter is crying during all of this as my wife is trying to console her, as my neighbor and I are attempting to remove my father-in-law from the doorway, but he wouldn't move. Eventually my wife called the police, and I'm guessing another neighbor called them as well because they responded within mere minutes. My in-laws kept screaming that we were taking their rightful grandchild away, and that we'd all be damned to burn in hell for this, but honestly that just made me laugh. The police kept asking them to leave, but they wouldn't. Eventually they were arrested for refusing to leave and the police were nice enough to call a tow truck for us to be able to back out of the driveway. Lo and behold, as the police were handcuffing my in-laws, they both had on those X39 patches and even the police questioned them about it. But whatever, what's done is done. We were able to finally leave and on to new adventures. We've been settled in at our new house for the better part of over a month, and we're enjoying it greatly. No word from her in-laws, and they have no idea where we are. We have them blocked but we'll eventually get messages from unknown numbers or Facebook accounts asking where we moved, but there's no way they're that foolish to believe we'll actually tell them. Luckily, neither my last state or this one have any grandparents' rights, so we're in the clear there. Thank you everyone. Hopefully this is my last update. Relevant comments, Quicksand 32. Seriously look into a P.O. box and have all mail routed there. OOP. Hey there. We actually did get our mail routed to a P.O. box. Soflasun. Why were they not arrested for violating a restraining order? OOP. We informed the police they had a restraining order. I just don't think they cared. They were more concerned with getting them off our property as opposed to them violating the restraining order. I think one of their final charges after being arrested was violation of a restraining order though. The police just didn't seem to care at the time, which is unfortunate, to say the least. Final update. Well, this is certainly to be the last update, when I honestly thought the last post I made would be the final one. About 4.5 months ago, give or take me, my wife and daughter moved across the country to avoid her parents, and I'm happy to say that, beyond some annoying phone calls from different numbers, and messages on Facebook, things were quiet. About 3 months ago or so I posted what I thought would be the final update, but I know some of you asked to be kept in the loop, so here we are. Over a month ago or so, we were informed that her in-laws were shot and killed by the new homeowners of the previous house we lived in. In their infinite wisdom, they for some reason thought we never actually moved after not getting any responses and broke into our previous house to kidnap our daughter. The new homeowners were awake, and after my in-laws broke into what was our daughter's room, which was now the homeowner's child's room, the homeowners shot my father-in-law, killing him almost instantly. My mother-in-law tried to climb out of the window but was shot in the back and succumbed to it while in the hospital. I don't have all the details. These are just what I was able to piece together from the police report and my old neighbor. My wife is in shock and isn't quite sure how to handle the news, but she at least tells me that she at least knows now that our daughter will finally be safe. After we got the news, we just sat on the couch and I comforted her all night, and we both eventually fell asleep on the couch. She says she finally feels safe and is glad our kid will be, but she still never wanted them to die, and I get that. I don't wish death upon anybody. My wife and I are glad the current homeowners and their kid is okay, and she's shaken, worried that if we hadn't moved, they'd have succeeded and kidnapped our daughter. I told her there's no use worrying about the what-ifs, because what's done is done and at least she's safe. My wife agreed, but I can still tell she's trying to wrap her head around the entire ordeal. We had started seeing a therapist about the entire experience, and the therapist suggested taking a vacation, so I just recently purchased some tickets to Hawaii and had just surprised my wife with them this weekend, as a nice little getaway vacation, as my wife always wanted to go to Hawaii. My wife was ecstatic when I showed her the tickets, and she's excited to go, and I'm hoping this vacation is just what she needs for hopefully not stress as much. I feel awful knowing that my wife isn't sure where to go or what to do, and I'm being her rock as best as I can, and I'm thankful that we have that therapist for her to work through some of her stress and get help. My wife and I are doing okay if anyone is curious. She's just trying to wrap her head around what happened. This will be my final update, everyone, and I'm hoping everyone here has a great day. We leave for Hawaii in a week, so we're both excited. My wife has been trying to keep her mind off things by focusing on the trip, as she says it's helping. I'll catch everyone later, but don't expect any updates. Goodbye everyone. Thank you all for your support. My boyfriend admitted he wishes I was still fat after I lost weight, and I'm so king pissed to process his hurtful confession. Original post. I, 21F, have been dating my boyfriend Adam, 28M, for almost 3 years now. I feel like some context is needed to accurately describe our situation. When I was 15, my older brother passed away in a car accident, and it threw me into a depression where I became very overweight. He was my best friend and meant the world to me. Losing him led me into the worst years of my life. A few months after I turned 18, I met Adam. He was one of my friend's older brother and we hit it off. He's smart, charismatic, and I loved his sense of humor. Adam is also heavy, but he was so comfortable in his skin, it really made me admire his confidence. I couldn't stand to even look at myself in a mirror, so this last year I buckled down and lost a very significant amount of weight, and now I'm even below my high school weight. I've never been this fit in my life and I feel so good about myself. My 21st birthday was this last Saturday and Adam and my friends had planned a party for me. Unfortunately, Adam had a family emergency, so he wasn't going to be around for my birthday. I was completely okay with this and reassured him that it was fine when I drove him to the airport. My friend Andrea recommended that we should instead go to a strip club, and I thought that was an amazing idea. I'd like to reiterate that it would have been a woman's only strip club. The next time I talked to Adam, I told him about the change in plans and he was very adamant that he didn't want me to go. He said it wasn't that he didn't trust me, it's that he didn't trust my friends. I ended up dropping the subject to not cause him further stress, and we ended up just having the party they originally planned. Adam arrived today and I felt something was off. Something has been off since I lost weight. I kept badgering him until he finally opened up. We talked and he eventually told me that we don't even look like we belong together anymore. He brought up an instance where we were at the grocery store a week ago and a guy was asking me questions about watermelons in the fruit section. It was a casual conversation, but he referred to my boyfriend as my brother and I quickly corrected him. The guy apologized, said we looked similar and walked off. At the time my boyfriend laughed it off and didn't bring it up again. He then said something that pissed me off so bad. He said, "Sometimes I wish you were still big so no one else would want you." I lost all sympathy and quickly corrected him. I told him even when I was a big girl, guys hit on me all the time, and just like I always do, I told them I have a boyfriend that I love. He looked dumbfounded when I said this. Elle told him how fucked it was, that he wishes that I was back at the size where I was depressed and hated myself. He told me he misspoke and I'm blowing things out of proportion. We argued more and he ended up leaving to his brothers to give me space. I've been sitting here just pissing myself off about what he said. Did he really think I was that unattractive when I was bigger? If so, why did he date me? Did he think I was desperate to be with someone because I was so fat? I just need some third-party advice. Am I overreacting? Relevant comments. Commenter 1, Edna. And he was a 25-year-old seeking out an 18-year-old to date. Trust that when you're 25 you'll see how big a gap that is. He was probably dating someone that much younger than him because girls his age didn't want him and he thought you'd be easier to control. Even if this wasn't an active thought, the second you took control of your body by losing weight, he was unhappy. A good partner hypes you up when you achieve something you wanted. They don't try to cut you down. This dude is not worth the time of day. OOP. Well, all I know is that his previous relationship lasted 5 years and it was a girl he dated in college. I never really considered that he had the intention to control me, and I really hope that isn't the case. This is the first comment he's really made that cut me down, but now that I think about it, you are right. He hasn't really hyped me up either. Commenter 2. You are 21 and feeling good about yourself. Maybe it's time to lose about 300 pounds more of dead weight and leave the guy that snatched up an 18-year-old when he was 25 because he thought no one else wanted her. Update 1. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone for giving me their opinions and advice. It really means a lot to me. I debated if I should post again, but I need an outlet to vent. I've been laying here in the dark and I've read basically all the comments, and I think an update is warranted. Basically, Adam and I are taking a break and I've been crying my eyes out for the last few hours. He came home today and we both agreed that we need to talk and get everything out in the open. He started off by apologizing for what he said, particularly the "sometimes I wish you were still big so no one else would want you" part. I asked if he thought I was unattractive when I was bigger and he said no, but he doesn't understand why I'm dieting and exercising the way I am. Adam said I shouldn't have to cook 2 different meals and should just eat what he does, and me going to the gym 6 times a week is obsessive. I told him that it makes me happy, bettering myself, and he said that it has completely changed me. Adam went on to talk about how all I really care about is my looks now. He said he liked my hair how it used to be before I went to a stylist. He liked how I used to paint my own nails instead of getting them done, and how I used to never wear makeup instead of how I have to have some on now before I go out. Adam then said he knows I lost weight because I was unhappy with myself, but he was always happy with me and he doesn't understand why I have to keep trying to make myself hotter when I was already hot. We talked back and forth, but it felt like I was just doing everything wrong. Adam said that I don't ever want to do things he enjoys anymore, like play video games with him or binge watch movies, and he feels like I'm a different person. I have pushed him to go on walks with me or go to the gym in the past, but he's told me no, so I figured we just had our different hobbies. I feel bad because I see from his point of view I have changed and I may not be the girl he fell in love with. I told him I love him and he said he loves me too, but we need to separate for a bit and figure out if we're best for each other. I didn't argue, I just said okay and let him pack his things and leave. He's letting me stay in the apartment until I can move my stuff out. I've been crying my eyes out and everything feels like a blur. I don't know where to go from here and I feel like I ruined my first real relationship. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. You didn't really mention in your original post that you had started focusing so much on how you look besides your fitness regime. Or that you had stopped enjoying the same activities, for example gaming and movie binging. This isn't a criticism of you, but it does indeed sound like you have changed significantly from the person he knew, so perhaps separation was not a terrible idea. You are very young, I know it sounds cliche, but you will find someone else who you're more compatible with in future. It hurts right now, but you just need time. Be strong. OOP. Well, at the time it felt like me changing my appearance wasn't so much of an issue since he never complained about it, but I see now I was wrong. Now replaying everything in my mind, his reactions have always been indifferent whenever I would show off my hair or nails to him. I still would play video games and watch movies with him, but it wasn't as often as it used to be. For a time that's all we did every day. I do appreciate your input and I know it may sound dumb, but I'm holding out hope we work things out. Commenter 2. Taking a break? What the hell does that mean? Are you single or taken? Can you have a hookup or not see other people? Look, good luck, but you're going to get hit on and realize you're missing out on a lot of fun. I'm surprised he asked for the break. Seems he would be extremely worried that you will meet someone new and leave him. OP. From what he said, he wants us to take some time apart and connect again. I was also confused by what this meant for us, but he doesn't want us to see other people for now. I know most people are suggesting we split up, but I get this sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach when I consider it. Update 2. I want to start by saying thank you to everyone who reached out. Your support has meant so much to me. To get to the point, I broke up with Adam a few days ago and I'm still trying to process everything that happened. Things have been hectic and I'm settling into my new situation. Last week I had decided it was time for me to move out of the apartment. Adam made it clear that our relationship wasn't going to improve unless we took time apart, and as bad as I felt, I knew he wasn't going to come back until I was gone. I knew I wasn't going to be able to move all my stuff by myself, so I decided to ask a coworker if they could help me. The only heavy things I had were basically my bed frame and dresser. The rest were just boxes and suitcases full of clothes. Last Monday I asked my coworker David if he could help me move my stuff into my parents' garage. I know he used to work for a moving company and he has a truck, so I was hoping he could do it for $100 at Lowell. I showed him pictures of my stuff and he said he would just have to take apart my bed frame, but yeah, he could do it on Thursday, which was his next day off. I didn't have that day off, but I had PTO to cover it, so it was fine. Thursday comes and David shows up to the apartment. I show him where everything is and he goes out to his truck to get his tools. It wasn't more than like a minute or two when I hear Adam's voice yelling, "Did you fuck my girlfriend?" I immediately go into the living room and see David with his hands up looking very confused, and Adam asking him, "Did you fuck her?" I swear this was the most humiliating thing that has ever happened to me. I could feel my face get red. I go over and grab Adam's hand and pull him into the bedroom. He's freaking out, asking if David is the guy I've been seeing. I told him he's crazy and that David is my coworker and he's only here to help me move my stuff. He said he didn't believe me and he wanted to see my phone. I told him I didn't have anything to hide, but if he goes through my phone, that's a deal breaker for me. He waited a second before taking my phone and going through it. I stood there watching him open up all my socials, all my texts, and even scroll through all of my pictures. It was almost like a light switch went off in my head and whatever love I had for him was gone. I felt disgusted. I told him that I was breaking up with him and he looked shocked. He started apologizing and said he was coming over to tell me not to move out and that he wants me to stay with him, but he just freaked out when he saw me here with a guy. That's when I realized that Adam knows I work on Thursdays, so why was he even over here? I asked him this, but he just kept apologizing and begging me to not leave him. Something in me finally snapped and I screamed at him to get out. I've been mad before, but I've never screamed at anyone like that. He just stared at me, turned around and left. I immediately picked up my phone and blocked him. I found David in his truck and apologized to him and asked if he could still help me, and he said of course. After we had everything put up in my parents' garage, I went to pay him and he said instead I could buy him lunch. I took him up on the offer because it would be cheaper than $100 and I suggested Applebee's. LOL. It was nice getting to vent to someone who saw how crazy Adam was firsthand. After we were done, he went and paid and said I can get him next time. The breakup didn't really hit me until the next day, and even though I cried my eyes out, it felt good, like I got this huge weight off my chest. To be honest, it's almost scary how okay I'm feeling about it all. Maybe it hasn't fully sunk in yet, and I'll miss him when it does, but for now I feel fine. Thank you to everyone who's given their advice and helped me. I'm pretty sure this is my last update unless something crazy happens. Top comments. Commenter 1. Woo! The fact that he was there when he knew you were meant to be working is a huge red flag. Is he tracking you because WTF? Stay safe. Commenter 2. You need to check your stuff for AirTags. It's super sus that he knew to be at the house when you were. I caught my wife cheating, confronted her affair partner, and exposed the truth to his spouse. I'm at a total loss. I do not know what to do. There were signs, but I missed them. I was blinded by love and never believed this would happen to me. Not with her, my wife and best friend of nearly 2 decades. I work out of town and wasn't meant to return until tonight. We were scheduled to travel for a 2-day road trip tomorrow. Work was sluggish, so I came home yesterday afternoon. This trip was planned to offer us some alone time after spending so much time with family and friends this summer. When I arrived home, there was a truck in my driveway that I did not recognize. My neighbor recently inquired how I liked the new truck, but I assumed he was incorrect and didn't think much of it. As soon as I saw the truck, I had a bad feeling. I loved and trusted my wife wholeheartedly, but that feeling was there, and it was powerful. I sneaked around the side of the house and into our bedroom window. It was open, and I could hear them as I approached. When I peeked through the window, my worst fears were confirmed. They were absolutely naked on my bed. I walked away. I've been fighting the impulse to do something I know I'll regret. At this point, I'm not sure I care what happens to me. I spent the night at my family's cabin and drank everything. Today, on my way home, I considered confronting her but decided against it. I am not ready. Anger is all I feel. All I can think of is violence. I'm not in a good place right now. Not good enough to see her. I'm back in the cabin now. I have 60 ounces of rum and have been staring at it for an hour. I want to get drunk and forget about it, but I don't want to make stupid judgments. I understand that this is a key moment in my life, and my actions in the coming days will shape the rest of my life. That is why I am here. I need help. I'm not ready to speak with family or friends, so I'm reaching out to strangers. The quantity of help and guidance I've received is incredible. I honestly got choked up thinking about how many kind people out there are eager to help a stranger. It gives me hope for the world just when I need it. The downside of all this help is that I'm having difficulty responding to everyone. I have around 600 private messages and a few hundred comments on Reddit. I would like to thank everyone individually, and I will make an attempt to do so, but it will take time. For now, I'd like to express my gratitude to everyone for their nice messages and useful suggestions. It means so much to me. I've seen a few comments and queries that keep coming up, so I wanted to provide some clarity and a tiny update. If you can't tell, I am feeling much better today. The discomfort has nearly entirely vanished. I still feel like I've been hit in the belly, but I've started thinking about the future. It's barely been 2 days, so this does not feel right to me. Is this the quiet before the storm, or am I incredibly resilient? When I referred to my wife as my best friend, I was referring to the 2 roles she filled in my life. The other guy wasn't my best buddy or anyone I know. I didn't get a good look at him, but based on what I saw in his vehicle, I don't think he's somebody I know. We don't have children, but we were planning to have them soon. We recently sold our home and were planning to relocate closer to my employment in September, when the new owners took possession. I intend to thank my neighbor for tipping me off, but discreetly, as he did for me. Many folks have asked me about the signals I mentioned. Here are a handful that come to mind right now. She was texting really late at night. She began going out for after-work drinks with her buddies on a regular basis. This was unlike her, but I was relieved she was being social. She stated she went to yoga once a week but didn't pay because a coworker, who was also the instructor, offered her a pass in exchange for assisting with setup and cleanup. It struck me as unusual that she appeared rigid for someone who claimed to practice yoga. Unknown caller hang-ups become common. We generally answer one another's phones when we're close, but I responded multiple times only to hear someone hang up. We receive a lot of spam calls, however they are mainly from telemarketers or debt collectors attempting to contact the previous owner of our number. This type of hang-up is uncommon. When my brother came, we had a long conversation. He has been my true best friend, and I've understood how vital it is to remember that he will always be there for me, without judgment, just as I would be for him. Even though we disagree on occasion, he truly defines what a true friendship is. Because I was scheduled to be home last night, I opted to answer my wife's text. We are not permitted to use phones on site at work, so it was appropriate for me to declare I could only text her. She knows I can easily sneak in a few messages. I texted her that I needed to visit one of the company's remote locations and wouldn't be able to call until the end of the weekend. I also told her I'd cancel our bookings and reschedule them later. She replied that she could bring her best friend with her to the romantic bed and breakfast on the vineyard that I had reserved. I realized it wasn't the best friend she wanted me to believe she had. I informed her that I had already handed the reservation to my brother and his wife because it was non-refundable, and they would reimburse me in a month. I canceled all of my other reservations this morning except for the romantic one. My brother is accompanying me instead. Fortunately, the hotel allowed us to move from the honeymoon suite to a room with 2 beds. There's also a gorgeous lake nearby with boat rentals, so we've turned this into a much-needed fishing trip. This trip means I'm free for the weekend and won't have to contact her for a few days. That reduces tension and provides me more time to contemplate. Right now, I'm considering getting divorced. I honestly don't see any other way. My brother is supportive, but he has encouraged me to wait a few weeks and speak with someone first. His wife has a buddy who is a couples counselor and is available to chat with me on Monday. I don't think it will change my view, but it might help me sort through some of this mess. I've also started seeking assistance from others online and contacting lawyers. At the absolute least, I want to be prepared for what appears to be an unavoidable situation. I want to do it the proper way. I never imagined she would try to deceive me, but I also never expected her to cheat. I need to be ready for anything. Thank you again, everyone. I'm going to attempt to enjoy my weekend to the fullest. Update 2, busted my wife. Cheating a lot has transpired in the last few days. I'll start with the less crucial topics. My brother, Matt, and I drove nearly 5 hours to the vineyard bed and breakfast. I genuinely appreciate his being there for me through everything. The drive ended up being more of a venting session than anything else, but it did help me clear my mind. After chatting about my feelings for most of the trip, I just needed some alone time. While Matt went out to dinner, I remained in the room. He brought me some food, which I appreciated. The following day we hit the water. Matt was able to hire a boat, and the proprietor of the B&B, knowing about our fishing plans, generously packed a small cooler with food and drinks. It was their attempt to make the romance package more useful for 2 brothers on a fishing trip. It was a thoughtful gesture on their part to make the romance bundle more beneficial to 2 brothers. The fishing wasn't spectacular. We both got a couple of trout but had to release them because of their size. The B&B snacks worked great. We stopped fishing in the middle of the afternoon and went around to vineyards and fruit markets, where we bought food and cases of wine for Matt's wife Jennifer. That night, we treated ourselves to the largest tomahawk steak we could find. On Sunday, we returned to Matt's apartment. He lives in the town adjacent to me, about an hour away. When we arrived, Jen was waiting for us, and we opened a cold bottle of white wine from the cooler. That's when my weekend officially ended. Jen informed me that, while we were away, she chose to spy on my wife. She claims the guy came to my house on Friday night and stayed all night. On Saturday morning, Jen arrived just as he was leaving. She followed him home and discovered the flat where he lived. My wife stayed there on Saturday night, sending me texts expressing her love and missing me. Jen revealed that she divided her time between visiting family in my town and following my wife. She happened to catch my wife leaving his apartment on Sunday morning and snapped a couple photos of them hugging and kissing before she got in her car. I do not want to see the photographs. That very much closed the deal for me. I don't think I'll ever trust her again. If she can lie so simply and tell me she loves me while she's with someone else. Despite everything, I resolved not to make any rash judgments based on emotion. I need to be cool and composed. Jen informed me that Sharon, the counselor she had mentioned earlier, was coming over for supper. Sharon was the person Jen scheduled an appointment with for me. To clarify, Sharon had never met my wife, and this was my first time meeting her. Sharon was a very pleasant girl, and we hit it off instantly. After supper, we took the dogs for a walk through Matt's neighborhood to have a private talk. Sharon was a great listener, and I felt comfortable being open with her, which was quite beneficial. Even though I am close to my brother, talking with Sharon was different, and much needed. It's the same reason I enjoy blogging on Reddit. It allows me to vent and untangle the jumble in my thoughts. Our walk lasted about an hour, and Sharon's only meaningful suggestion was to avoid delaying the conversation with my wife. She advised me that the more I wait, the tougher it will be to approach her. Sharon stated that I need clarity more than anything right now, and my wife is the only one who can deliver it. Later that night, Matt and Jen offered to let me remain with them for as long as I needed. I know Matt and I have boundaries when it comes to living in close quarters, so I contacted my supervisor. He was able to place me in business housing, where I had been staying every 2 weeks. Normally, I leave on my days off, but my boss has arranged for me to work full-time for a few months if needed. I chose to reschedule a session with Sharon for later this week, assuming that our walk would suffice for the initial meeting. She agreed. Sunday night, I lay in bed, contemplating how to approach the subject with my wife. Even imagined scenarios made me angry or sad. I decided to wing it. I am typically good under pressure. Yesterday, I awoke, said farewell to Matt and Jen, and drove home. I worried what I would do if the guy was there when I arrived. I recognized that meeting him would definitely return me to the same angry state I had been in a few days before. To avoid this, I decided to perform a drive-by first. Neither his truck nor my wife's automobile were present. I walked inside and gathered a variety of necessities and items I didn't want to part with, primarily photos and old family treasures. I packed everything into my pickup and drove over to the guy's residence. Her car was not present either, but his truck was. I decided to text her to ask where she was. She stated she was going to grab groceries. I don't trust her right now, so I stopped by the grocery shop to make sure she was there. I feel so horrible confessing that I did that, but my trust has been damaged, and it is the only way I can be certain of anything. I contacted her again, asking her to come home because we needed to chat. She said, "What's wrong?" I just told her to be honest and shut off my phone. She arrived home 15 minutes later. When she walked in, she came up to hug and kiss me, as she always does. I turned away from her. She asked me again what was wrong, and I told her that she needed to be more honest with me. She pretended she didn't understand what I was saying. I responded, "Okay, if you can't be honest, then I'm leaving." She panicked and inquired, "Are you talking about yoga?" I assumed it was a start, so I asked her what she meant. She stated that she had not been going to yoga. The remainder of the conversation proceeded like this. I said, "If you weren't going to yoga, where were you going?" Her response, "I was taking walks to relax because I've been really stressed lately." Me, "Why were you so stressed? And why did you lie to me about what you were doing?" Her response, "Preparing for the move has been stressing me out, and I didn't know how to tell you." Me, "So you choose to lie? What was the big deal about informing me you were going for a stroll to relieve stress?" Her, "I did not intend to lie. I was merely scared that my stress might exacerbate yours." Me, "But I am not stressed. You don't seem to be telling me everything." Her response, "What do you mean?" Me, "I believe you are lying about more than simply skipping yoga. I'm asking you again to be honest. You have already lied to me, so this cannot work if you continue to lie." Her, "I'm not sure what more to say. Are you referring to last weekend, when I went out for drinks with several pals and arrived home late? I had no idea she had gone for a drink or stayed out late. I was at work, a few hours away." I ask, "Is that what you actually did that night, or was that a lie too?" Her response, "I went for drinks that night." She subsequently revealed that she hadn't seen her best friend, whom she claimed to have been with. My response, "Who did you see?" She says, "No one. I just drank alone." This is me, "You drink alone now?" She responded, "Yeah, maybe I have a problem." Me, "Maybe. We'll discuss that later. This is your final chance to be honest, or I will leave." She responded, I don't know what else to say." Me, "Okay. I am leaving." At that point, I stood up and departed. When we dispute, I usually go for a drive to calm down, so she assumed I was doing the same. But then she noticed I had brought my clothing, toiletries, and Xbox with me. That's when she began blowing up my phone. I informed her that I had given her the opportunity to be honest, but she did not accept it, therefore there was nothing further to say. She begged and pleaded with me to come home and discuss it in person. She kept repeating she didn't know why I was unhappy or what I felt she had done. She continued saying she loved me and would never hurt me. Hearing her say that ripped a new hole in my chest. Those words had always been consoling, but suddenly they felt like a dull, jagged knife cutting into my heart in the most agonizing way. I couldn't take it, so I hung up. She called back around 40 times before I was prepared to respond again. This time, she inquired, "Did you talk to Karen?" I asked, "Why?" She said, "Come home." I do not want to say this over the phone. I agreed and drove around a little longer to lower my heart rate. Then I headed home. When I arrived, the conversation went like this. She responded, "I assume you spoke to Karen?" Me, "No." Her, A few weeks ago, when you were at work, Karen and I went out for drinks. A couple of guys began buying us drinks and we simply played along. As we were leaving, one of the guys attempted to kiss me. I instantly pushed away and informed him that I was married. I felt terrible about it and wanted to tell you, but I panicked and chose to keep it from you. Karen hooked up with the other guy and gave his friend my phone information without asking me. He has texted me several times, but I have never responded. My response: "Can I see your phone?" She says, "Yes." She handed me her phone, which was absolutely empty of text messages save for mine and her mother's. She never deletes her texts, so this was unexpected. I checked her photos and they were similarly empty. Then I searched through the deleted images and discovered one person I didn't recognize. My response: "Who is this?" Her: "That's the guy who tried to kiss me." I replied, "Why did you take a picture of him?" Her response: "I was just being stupid." Me: "That isn't the cause. Why did you take a photo of him?" Her response was, "I don't know." I ask, "Is that everything you want to tell me, or is there more?" Her response: "That's all I can think of." I departed again. I did not want to be fed any more trickle truths. I got into my pickup and drove away. She bolted outside, attempting to stop me, but I was already out of reach. I went to a local park, sat on my tailgate, and ate my lunch while deciding what to do next. While sitting there, I began to recall other things I should have been aware of. For example, I worked a weekend shift and went to bed early. My wife went out to the club with some girlfriends. I awoke at 4 a.m., and she was still not home. I contacted her multiple times, but she did not respond. About 30 minutes later, she called again and asked if I could pick her up. When I arrived, she explained that they had tried unsuccessfully to hail a taxi. A couple of males her friend knew gave them a ride, but they insisted on stopping at their home first. When they arrived at the men's residence, her married buddy entered a room with one of the guys. My wife stated she spent some time hunting for her companion but eventually gave up and had a drink in the kitchen with her housemates while waiting. When I called, she said she didn't hear the phone. We argued about this episode, and she expressed displeasure with her friend's behavior, saying she had cut that buddy out of her life. I assumed the situation was behind us. Another time, she went to see a close friend in a distant city for a girls' night. 4 girls were apparently drinking and watching movies in their pajamas. Around 1 a.m., she called to say goodnight. We spoke for almost 20 minutes and she kept telling me they were having a nice girls' night. Then I heard a male voice in the background. I questioned who it was, and she initially denied hearing anything. But when it happened again, louder this time, she said, "Oh yeah, X brought a number of males with her. Everyone here is quite upset about it." She was inebriated and 3 hours away. I had no choice but to trust her again. We argued over why she hadn't told me there were men around, and she pledged never to put herself in such a scenario again. Clearly, that pledge did not stay. After remembering all of these experiences and the conversations we had about them, I felt prepared to give it one more attempt. I turned my phone back on, and it nearly instantly rang. I responded, and she screamed for me to come home. I drove back to the house. When I stepped in, I found her sitting on the couch, crying her eyes out and constantly sobbing, "I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry." "Sorry for what?" I inquired. She began to sway back and forth, as if she were losing control. It took her almost 5 minutes to regain her breath and speak. Her response: "I lied about the guy who tried to kiss me." Me: "Okay, tell me what occurred." Her: "The 4 of us actually returned to his apartment that night. We played around." Hearing her say it made me dizzy, as if the room was closing in and a million voices were screaming in my mind. I guess I was experiencing a panic attack. I went to the restroom, splashed cold water on my face, and waited till I felt better. My response: "What did you do?" She asked, "Do you really want me to tell you?" Me: "Yes." Her response: "He fingered me, and I gave him a blowjob." My response: "Was that it?" She says, "Yes." I said, "I'm not playing this game anymore. Either tell me everything now, or this will be our final conversation." She began crying again and needed a few minutes before she could speak. Her: "We got together again and had sex. I'm so sorry. I adore you and will do anything to make up for this. This is me. Just the one time." Her: "If I'm telling you the truth, please give me the opportunity to make amends. Please." My response: "I'll think about it." Her: "There was an affair. We've been hooking up while you were away for work. It's been going on for about a month. He is married and they are about to divorce." My response: "Does he know you're married?" She says, "Yes." Me: If he's having an affair because his marriage is failing, does that imply you believe ours is failing? Was that what you told him? Her: No, I do not believe ours is failing. I am so stupid. I despise myself. Please do not abandon me. I can fix it. Me: How? She answered: Whatever you want. My answer was, if you were in my shoes, or even in his wife's shoes, what would fix this for you? Her: I know the truth. Being able to trust that you mean what you say. You can trust me. I messed up and will not do this again. Me: If you were his wife, wouldn't you want to know the truth? She says, yes. I said, then fix this. She responded, you want me to call her? You replied, if you think that's what you would want. She attempted to phone his wife, but there was no answer. Several minutes later, her phone rang. It was labeled Karen work, but she appeared surprised, so I knew it wasn't Karen. My response: Is that him? She says, yes. I answered the telephone. The coward instantly exclaimed, oops, I must have the wrong number. Me: No, this is the husband of the woman you have been cheating on. I'll let you talk to her. She has something to say. I passed the phone to her. Her: I told him everything. He knows the whole truth. We're finished. It was simply a fling and you should not approach me again. Before she hung up, I requested to see the phone. My response: What divorce lawyer are you using? His response: I'm not getting divorced. Me: Oh, but you didn't inform my wife you were. He says, no. Me: Okay then. Can I speak to your wife? I believe she has the same right to know about this as I do. He says, please man. I didn't realize she was married. Don't ruin my marriage because of a mistake. Me: You ruined mine because of a mistake. It is only right that I inform your wife. He says, please don't. She is at work right now. I'll tell her everything once she gets home. I swear, this is me. Okay, you do that. I hung up. Then I asked my wife if she knew where his wife worked and her name. She did. I told her to phone over and ask for his wife at her office. His wife answered and informed my wife that she was going to leave for the day but would call back from her car. A few minutes later, she did. His wife asked, what's going on? My wife said, I have something dreadful to tell you. I don't want to cause any accidents, therefore please do not drive. His wife said, oh my God. What happened to his name? My wife said, no. He's currently at your flat. I just wanted to let you know that we have been having an affair for a month. I am coming honestly to my husband, and I believe you deserve the same respect. His wife was silent for a moment before stating, if this is some sick joke, I will find out who you are. Then she hung up. Not even 10 minutes later, my wife received a text from Karen work that read, thanks. You just ruined my life. I seized the phone and said, you have just ruined 4 lives and 2 marriages. Don't forget, this was your fault. For the next hour, my wife pleaded with me to stay. She offered counseling, pledged never to leave my side, and even offered sexual favors, which was precisely what I expected based on the complaints I'd read online. Then she suggested we take a trip, stating, my treat. We need time away to reconnect. She stated we needed quality time together because my work schedule was keeping us apart. Again, she said precisely what I expected. What she didn't expect was when I informed her I'd already scheduled counseling, for myself. She also didn't anticipate me to reveal that I had discovered her in our bed with someone else. And she didn't expect me to reply, I already have a place to stay. When I told her everything, she slumped on the floor and sobbed. She kept insisting that she didn't deserve to live and begged me to kill her since she was too horrible to be with anyone. This continued for a time. I waited for 4 hours, listening to her make excuses and attempting to embrace, cuddle, or charm me into staying and resolving things. In the end, I called Karen and told her that her suicidal friend needed someone to look after her. Then I left. It's been almost a day since that happened, and I haven't spoken to her since. She has been phoning and messaging me all day. Her friends and family have also reached out, each with a unique excuse or cry for empathy. The one message that genuinely stuck out came from her father. He wrote, do what is best for you. I will always love you like a son, no matter what. Reading that was the first time I had a decent cry since it all began. Tomorrow, I'll visit with Sharon, my counselor, and on Thursday, I'll see a lawyer. I believe I know where this is going, but I'm not certain until it happens. I apologize for the lengthy story, but it helps to rant like this. Once again, I sincerely appreciate all of your comments and letters. People sharing their own tales have made me feel less shattered and provided much needed hope. Thank you, everyone. My sister thought she needed to go to the ER for her period. What began as a simple babysitting job turned into a scary situation. Original post, August 22nd, 2024. Okay, so I, 19M, am babysitting my little sister, 15F, while our parents are on a trip internationally. It's like a completely different time zone and the signal sucks. They get home in like 6 days. But we are both pretty self-sufficient and felt like it would be fine, and my parents left us food and money and stuff. We've been Gucci for a whole week so far. Anyway, this morning she got her period while we were just sitting playing video games, and she got blood all over the couch, so I paused the game while she took care of it and put on a tampon and didn't make a big deal of it. I was trying to be nice because I know it can make girls cranky and it hurts and stuff, so I got snacks and a blanket and whatever, and we kept playing. Well, like maybe 40 minutes later she freaked out because she bled on the couch again, and I'm like, did you put the thing on wrong or what? So she changed again, and I even helped her clean the blood off the couch this time, and I figured she'd use a bigger feminine thing. NBD. Well, like 30 minutes after we start playing again, she pauses and goes to the bathroom, and I hear her scream, so I run over there thinking there's a spider or something, but she came out holding like this chunk. It was like a chunk of blood. But looking at it, I'm like, shit, maybe that's an organ? Like, is that your kidney? But she was like, no, it's a clot. And she was freaking out about it. Which, yeah, it was gross. It was like the size of a hacky sack. So I'm like, okay, well, go flush your clothes. Anyway, she cleans herself up, but then she said she doesn't want to play anymore, and I'm like, okay. So she spent an hour on the couch with her face all scrunched up doing yoga breathing and telling me her cramps were the worst ever. So I gave her Tylenol, but she wouldn't take it because she said she feels like she's gonna throw up. I brought her water and juice and warmed up that gel thing you stick on your stomach, you know? So I was trying to help. Well, then she says, oh no, and she gets up and goes to the bathroom, and as she's walking, she's got blood going down her leg. She yelled for me from the bathroom, and I went in there, and she's sitting there, and I hear this plopping sound, and there's more of those chunks. Like maybe 2 of them? And she says, I think we need to go to the ER. I'm like, why? And she tells me this is more blood than she's ever had and she doesn't feel good. But periods are supposed to suck, right? And she wouldn't take the Tylenol either, so she didn't really try to manage it at home. So then she started yelling at me, telling me I have to take her because she can't drive, but I'm pretty sure our parents will kill me if I take her to the ER for her period. Is that a thing? She's sitting in the shower now because she said she thought the warm water would feel good, and she was sick of bleeding on stuff and it's more comfortable than the toilet. I asked her if she just needs a bigger tampad, and she told me to STFU, so she's not even communicating with me at this point. I've asked her a few times if she's okay there, and she tells me I'm bleeding out, Mason. What do you think? So like she's not unconscious. IDK, I don't know anything about this, but I also know she hates blood and flips out about any minor cut too. Is going to the ER because of a period a thing? Can you bleed too much? I thought there was only a certain amount of blood in the vagina every month. I feel like she'd be more comfortable at home anyway if she'd just take the Tylenol. IDK, what to do? My sister is like average teenage girl height, pretty skinny because she's a ballerina and doesn't eat meat. She takes Accutane for her pimples. I'm not sure if there's other stuff that's important. She's had her period for like a year now, I'm pretty sure. Maybe more. She takes Flintstone gummy vitamins sometimes, like the ones in the purple jar. And she's obsessed with Celsius energy drinks. She wears contacts, and she had her wisdom teeth removed 2 months ago. IDK, I want her to be okay and stuff, but I'm not sure there's a good choice. Help? Relevant comments. Is there any chance of pregnancy miscarriage? I mean, I don't think so. She doesn't have a boyfriend, and when I asked she told me to fuck off, so probably not. Tampons or pads? I asked and she said she was using a tampon first, but after that she used both to prevent leaks. So both, I guess. She said always with wings and Tampax Sport. Commenter, Doc. If she's saturating more than 1 tampon in an hour, she should be seen. OOP, she said she was soaking both of them, so I guess we are going. Mini updates in comments. 30 minutes later. OOP, okay, she's throwing some extra clothes and shit in a bag. I'm trying to think what my mom would do, so I brought water bottles, sunscreen, and snacks. And something to do. Commenter, well, you don't need sunscreen at the hospital. Extra clothes, maybe a water bottle, snacks are good, insurance card, and call your parents. Didn't they leave another adult's number for you to call in an emergency? Do you have another relative? OOP, oh shit, yeah, I gotta tell my parents. Fuck. I mean, no they didn't, but I think it's because I'm an adult. Any other adults? OOP, all our relatives live on the other side of the country. But like she has friends and they have moms? But she wasn't into the idea of asking them. Commenter. Let this be a lesson to you. If a woman says this is wrong, this doesn't seem normal, about her own body, try listening to her and not making her jump through hoops convincing you something is wrong while you ask the internet for advice. Just listen to her. OP. Yeah, I was being a dick. The sunscreen. Yeah, lol, I didn't think about the fact that it's inside, just like my mom always yelling about sunscreen. OOP is encouraged to bring a comfort item for his sister. Okay, this makes me feel good because I packed her Squishmallow and I was kind of afraid to tell her I did that in case she thought it was embarrassing or gross. I sent my mom a text. 1 hour later, in response to someone telling him to bring a bowl in case she vomits. Nah FR, I wish I would have read this BC. She threw up in the car twice. She told me to stop driving like Stevie Wonder and I swear I was laughing so hard I almost had to pull over. Commenter. It sounds like she is really comfortable with you. I mean, she let you help her clean up and showed you clots. And you didn't get all you, I'm a guy, don't show me. Frankly, you're acting better than my husband would when it comes to helping. He'd never look at my blood or think about bringing snacks. So you are doing pretty good and she might not feel she needs another female. OP. I mean, if I acted grossed out, she'd tell me to grow up lol. My sister doesn't deal with stupid dudes. But yeah, we're close and it's just blood. So? About 2 hours after OG post. Okay, we got here. She threw up a couple times in the car, but she said she's good now. We walked in and she was like dripping down her leg again, and they saw that at the desk and maybe how fucking freaked I looked lol and took her back pretty much right away. Commenter. Adding to this, because questions about her sexual history and habits are definitely going to be asked, big bro, make it clear to her that if she wants you to leave, you will. If she wants you to stay, I would make it clear to her that you're not going to snitch on her about anything she says. If it's something that needs to be brought up to your parents, the docs can do that. It's not your job to tell your parents her answers. If you can't make her that promise, tell her you can't be in the room. OP. Nah, I'm not saying shit if I find anything out. She caught me smoking weed on the roof 2 years ago and still hasn't ratted lol. About 1 hour 10 minutes later, 3 from OG post. Okay, so she's getting Zofran and fluids and they're gonna do an ultrasound in the room here. So far we know she's not pregnant and her labs weren't great. Hemoglobin was 6.8. Editor's note, that's not good. Normal for women is 12. 16, see here? That's basically the one I remember. She said to tell everyone thank you for the advice and stuff. She also said she feels okay, just really tired. Commenter, the tube sounds like a catheter. They may want a clean urine sample. The excessive bleeding can contaminate a urine sample and affect certain test results. OP. Oh, yeah, okay. They said they wanted a urine sample, but I was thinking why can't she just pee in a cup? About 1 hour, 20 minutes later. Alright, the ultrasound was normal. She's being admitted. They want to test her for bleeding and clotting disorders now, and they're going to give her some blood. They asked if I know my blood type, which I don't, but I'm not sure why it matters. Sister is B+ though. Commenter 1, I mean, tampad's a good way of saying tampon or pad. Commenter 2, I agree, this is a useful neologism, OP. Thanks. OOP, see, I'm not a dumbass, I'm just inventing new terms. Commenter, you have properly unmounted your foot, so don't be afraid to ask questions now. It's much better to ask questions so you don't have to worry or freak out about things you don't know or don't understand, than to drive yourself mad with worry about something that might not warrant that worry or leaves you with unanswered questions. Best of luck to you and your sis. Was she happy you packed her Squishmallow? OP, yeah, she's sleeping on the Squishmallow like a pillow run and told me it's the only reason she forgives me lol. That's a good idea though, when she wakes up I'll ask her. Commenter. If she gets admitted, you may want to consider making a trip home to pick up any comfort items either of you two need, like a book, laptop, or blanket. But only if your sister feels comfortable with that. OP, so she packed clothes and I packed her Squishmallow and our switches so we would have stuff to do. But she didn't even want me to get up to go pee, so I don't think she wants me to leave lol. She's asleep now though. Commenter, definitely not the worst way to have to spend time in a hospital lol. Hope she turns out okay. Though I'm extremely curious about what the root cause is, and if you both feel comfortable sharing, I'd love to know. OOP. Yeah, she said she doesn't care as long as I don't post any pics of her because she said she looks like 2024 Amanda Bynes and Britney Spears combined lol. Commenter, for future reference, you can call your doctor's office or an advice nurse with stuff like this. They will ask you a bunch of questions about what's going on and tell you what to do. OOP, yeah, I was googling do you go to the ER for a bad period, and that's how I found the subreddit LOL, but if something ever happens again that's probably a better bet. 7 hours later, about 12 from OG post. We both slept. Got a hold of our parents. My mom is looking for flights back home. Sister is feeling a lot better at this point. They gave her medicine to stop the bleeding. I wasn't expecting this to blow up the way it did, so there's no way I'll be able to answer everyone. She's doing okay though. Should know more about the CT soon. Commenter. Mate, I grew up with a shitty big brother, and even now as adults I know he couldn't do half the job you've done of taking care of your little sis. You have restored my faith in humanity, and big bros. Glad to see the night was uneventful and that you got hold of your parents. And whatever you do, don't forget to reapply your sunscreen often. OOP, man, she changed my name in her phone to SPF. I'm never living this shit down, lol. 1.5 hours later, 13.5 from OG post. Alright, her vitals now are 101 65ths and 80. So better. 6 hours later, 19 from OG post. CT was good too. They're pretty sure she has a blood disorder. They're just waiting on the results of it. I guess when she had her wisdom teeth out she bled more than she was supposed to, but I didn't know that before. So yeah, just waiting on that for now, but they don't think the issue is her uterus or whatever. Commenter, just wanted to also mention that I think your post has become the #1 post to have ever been on with the most engagement ever. OOP, JFC, I'm kind of embarrassed, lol. I'm glad this is anonymous. 8 hours later, 27 hours from OG post. Alright, I'm gonna try here instead of a post and hopefully be more covert, lol, but could someone that knows about it tell me about type 2 von Willebrand's? Like the blood disorder? Because the internet says everything from like it's mild to it's life-threatening, and I just want to know more about it and like how it affects day-to-day life and stuff. I appreciate the help with my sister before too. It's cool you guys just do this. Comments on another sub. OOP. Yeah, it got scary fast. It was crazy. But like no one has ever brought up taking her to the ER for it before. So IDK, I thought maybe she was scared because our mom wasn't there to make her feel better, and I don't know anything about it. Update 1, same post. Probably late August 23rd, the following day from OG post. Update. Alright, so I guess I was posting updates in the comments, but it's better here. Anyway, so, my sister is okay. She had some scans that were all fine and they don't think she has fibroids or tumors or anything like that. She's feeling a little better but still staying here at least another day. Our mom and dad are flying home tomorrow now. My mom was pissed I texted her instead of calling at first, lol. Already had someone try to find me on Insta, so like if you know me or her, no you don't, lol. She doesn't want this going around school or whatever, so don't do it for at least 3 years, lol. She's cool with me updating through without her name or whatever. Also, our parents don't know about this either. IDK, I feel like we should wait until it's been a few years to tell them too, so they don't kill me, lol. She's gonna hold this shit over my head forever, lol. Anyway, they think she has a blood disorder that makes her not clot right. I'm not 100% sure how it works because she had big clots. But they said they're pretty sure that's what's going on because her PTT took longer than normal to clot. They're waiting on von Willebrand, SP, testing to come back, but they think she has type 2 probably. Gonna Google that tonight, BCIDK, what that is, and I've never heard of it, so I guess if any of the doctors know what that is, or if this sounds like it, LMK. Yeah, I wasn't expecting this to blow up like this, lol. I thought this was just like doctors answering questions like a helpline. But my sister said thank you for everyone telling me to take her and she's okay. Update 2. Same post, probably same day as previous update, or soon after update again. They confirmed it's von Willebrand, IDK if I'll ever spell that right. Anyway, it's genetic I guess, so they want me to get tested too, but like obviously I've never had periods and I've never had surgery, so it wouldn't be as obvious. There's still more testing, like more specific to the type. But anyway, sister is good and we have an answer. She's gonna talk to a hematologist next week about what that means and stuff. Update 3, same post, August 29th, 2024, 1 week from OG post. New update, so if I also have von Willebrand's. So does our mom. I've always bruised a lot and got super bad nosebleeds, but like I was also a dumbass kid teen who thought life was an audition for Jackass, so I didn't think it was weird, lol. Anyway, we're all about to be real familiar with hematology and my mom is pissed she's been told some women just bleed more her whole life, lol. Guess my mom and sister weren't just exaggerating when they would say they were bleeding out. So yeah, IG, if you're a girl reading this and you bleed as much as my sister, you should see a doctor. Hopefully no one gets gaslit like my mom did, but yeah. Here's a public apology for being ignorant on what y'all actually go through, BC. I thought you could only bleed so much a month, fully willing to admit how fucking stupid that was, lol. OOP second post, August 29th, 2024. Same day as update 3. Hi, so it's me again, 19M, apparently not that smart, questioning my career goals as a teacher. Anyway, my sister was on her period and thought she needed to go to the ER, and she actually did. I've got another question now, but first, thank you to everyone who answered my first post and educated me, because she was in rough shape. Except for the girl who suggested drinking whole milk. Even I'm not that fucking stupid, WTF. Anyway, my sister has von Willebrand's disease, type 2. My mom and I also have it, apparently. My mom just got gaslit for years about how much she bled, and it took my sister almost dying for us to all get diagnosed like TF. Anyway, I play in a recreational rugby league. Gonna have to pay dues soon, and I don't want to be out the money if I'm gonna get told I shouldn't play anymore, because it's a contact sport, but I don't see a hematologist for 5 weeks since I'm not urgent, lol. So was wondering if any of the doctors know if I'm gonna get told I probably shouldn't play rugby anymore. I also like rock climbing. Is that gonna be out? Should I learn chess or crochet or something? LOL. Thanks again. Relevant comments. Commenter. If you aren't confirmed yet, don't play contact sports right now until at least you get testing. Read that paper, as it has a decent list of other sports activities you can do more safely. You do not need to live in a bubble. OOP. Okay. Yeah, it's confirmed I have it, but I don't know the types and letters and stuff. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna go learn how to play snooker then, lol. Thanks, commenter. I'm a lurker here because I'm not a doctor. But I am a teacher, and I do remember your post. Teaching is a lovely career, and the profession would benefit from someone as compassionate as you. OOP. LOL. One thing is for sure, no students will get sunburned on my watch. Commenter. Thank you so much for this update. Not only is it interesting, but it furthers all of our professional knowledge base when we are able to hear how things turned out. Good luck to you and your family. And I'm glad that your mom's medical issues have finally been validated. That's huge. OP. Oh yeah, I mean, she's in her 40s. She'll kill me if I say exactly how old though, lol. So like, I can't believe she's been suffering for 30-something years. She said she's about to write a big "I told you so" to every doctor who ever told her to get used to it. Commenter. Dead serious, no pun intended. You should take up comedy. The ones that are the funniest are the ones that don't understand how funny they are. I'm glad your sister is okay, and I hope you're good too. Oh yeah, I'm totally good. Thanks, man. Showed this to my sister and she said, tell them you're already insufferable as it is. The last thing you need is an audience. Savage. LOL. Commenter. You'll know more after your consultation. There are different types of von Willebrands, so what applies to your sister and your mom will not necessarily apply to you. I'm glad you guys got to the bottom of it, and I'm extremely disheartened to hear that your mother was gaslit her entire life about her symptoms. There's not really an excuse from the medical community for that, and I'm sorry. OOP. Hey, thanks. It's good to know it might not be the same. Honestly, I'm surprised I made it this far without my brain bleeding, because I was the poster child for ADHD, lol. One more sunscreen comment. My dads have been calling me banana boats since they got back. RIP any game I had, lol. Final fun comment. Commenter. Please accept this version of an award because there's no way I'm paying for them through here, but dude, the sunscreen. I feel like this should be as well known on Reddit as the poop knife. OOP. IDK what a poop knife is, but I'm honored, lol. My parents gave me up for adoption because I was a boy. Now they've contacted me, requesting money to support my sister's education. I am a 25-year-old male. My narrative began when I was 6 years old, or rather, from the moment I was born. I am my parents' third and youngest kid. We weren't rich, but my parents made enough money to support 3 children. We resided in a tiny town in an ancestral home, which helped us conserve money. My grandparents owned a farm, which supplied a substantial percentage of our food. Dad worked as a truck driver and returned home every 3 to 4 days, while Mom was a waitress. Before I was born, my parents had 2 daughters. You can imagine how I felt as the unplanned child. Of course, as a child, I had no idea what was going on, but as I grew older, I started to figure it out. Learning that I was unwanted was a difficult lesson. My parents wanted to get rid of me, but the doctor cautioned them against it owing to potential health dangers to my mother. My mother was really interested in having a daughter. Her explanation was simple. She wanted me to avoid buying new clothes by reusing my sister's. My 2 sisters were close in age, so they could readily share clothing. They actually enjoyed it. However, when I was born a boy, my parents were extremely disappointed. They despised me for it. They dressed me in my sister's old clothes and even sent me to school wearing their abandoned uniforms. It was quite embarrassing. Although I was very young, I have vague memories of being teased for wearing a girl's uniform and having long hair. Any concerns I made were answered with a violent thrashing from my mother. I grew up in an environment filled with abuse and harsh words, much of which I didn't understand at the time. As I grew older and realized what they meant, I came to despise my parents. My father was marginally better than my mother, but because he was away most of the time, his treatment of me varied. Some days, he appeared impartial toward all three of us, but on others, he was as harsh, if not crueler, than my mother. I won't say I was a perfect child. As I grew older and became more aware of their fondness for my sisters, I began to rebel. They always got the finest of everything, while I only got leftovers. In response, I began to behave out because I blamed them for my troubles. I was frequently grounded, sometimes harshly. There were several times when I had to prepare my own breakfast and was without dinner. Consider the pain of a 6-year-old going through that. One particular episode stands out in my recollection, and I believe it constituted a watershed moment in my life. I had been brutally bullied on the playground for masquerading as a girl. When I returned home, I learned that my mother had purchased new clothes for my sisters for the holidays. In a flash of wrath, I took a pair of scissors and turned their new garments into confetti. I know what I did was wrong, and I'm not proud of it, but my actions sprung from grief, not malice. Instead of attempting to comprehend my anguish, my parents considered my actions as an unforgivable sin that demanded the worst punishment. They decided to place me up for adoption. They waited for a month and no one wanted to adopt me. This rejection inflamed their rage even further. I was continually reminded of how useless I was and how no one wanted me. Some of the harshest comments I heard came from my mother, who said, "I wish I had done a gender check. I would never have brought him into the world." It haunts me that my parents despised me so much for reasons beyond my control. After some time, when there was no response to my adoption, my parents began discussing it with their friends and family. Dad knew someone in the next town who had a food truck with his wife. They were poorer than us yet desired a child. They were in their late 30s and had been trying for over a decade without luck. Dad spoke with them and they easily consented to adopt me. I recall Dad breaking the news to Mom and my sisters, and they were overjoyed to be rid of me. Dad also cautioned them that the couple was impoverished, and I might not be able to attend school. Mom shrugged her eyes and replied, "Who cares? Just drop him off tomorrow." I stood in the corner, holding the curtain. Even though I despised my family, the prospect of abandoning them terrified and pained me. My eyes welled up with tears, but I refrained from crying aloud. They were so delighted, reveling in the moment, that they didn't know I was present. When Dad realized I was crying, he walked over, massaged my back and said, "Pack your belongings. We'll leave tomorrow morning for your new family." That was the moment I couldn't hold back. I cried out, but it went unheard. I went back to my room, packed my belongings, and prayed that my new family would be less evil. The following day, Dad drove me to the next town. I don't remember how I felt during the drive. I wasn't crying. Perhaps I was simply numb. My new family's home was small, with only one room, and they had transformed the warehouse into my bedroom. I had no complaints. At least they had made an effort to provide me with my own area, which I had never had before. At my previous home, I slept on a cot in the corner of my sister's room, with only a little closet for my possessions. Even though the new room was smaller, it was comfortable. My new parents, Mary and John, were warm and kind, but I came from a dysfunctional home and had never known love. My parents had shown affection to my sisters, but never to me. I questioned Mary and John's intentions and felt their kindness was fleeting. I tried not to become attached to them for fear that they would forsake me as well. You know, childhood trauma. It took me several months to discover that their love was genuine and not an act. Yes, my schoolwork was disrupted that year since my parents relocated me midterm, but Mary and John agreed to enroll me the following year. When I witnessed how hard they worked to save for my education, I fell in love with them. My adoption proved to be a blessing in disguise. My biological parents never returned after leaving me with Mary and John. Honestly, I was relieved. Here I was treated like a boy, with no shame or criticism. Mary and John worked extremely hard, operating their food truck for 14 to 16 hours per day. Their truck was parked right outside their apartment, so I was never alone. I could see them from my bedroom window, and I ultimately began spending my days at the truck, assisting where I could. When I eventually started school, I concentrated on my studies while also assisting with chores whenever I had free time. When I was a little over 10 years old, I was assisting John at the cash register, and I turned out to be fairly brilliant at math. I learned about business and accounting at a young age. After high school, I wanted to run their food truck full-time, but Mary and John demanded that I finish college first. Despite their advancing age and frailty, they used their savings to pay for my schooling. I wanted to take over the company to reciprocate their generosity, but they convinced me that they could make it for a few more years and encouraged me to complete my college education. I enrolled in college to study business and accounting, hoping to make them proud. After a while, when there was no response to my adoption, they began discussing it with their friends and relatives. Dad knew someone in the next town who had a food van with his wife. They were poorer than us yet desired a child. They were in their late 30s and had been trying for a child for almost a decade, but there had been no success. Dad spoke with them and they easily consented to adopt me. I remember Dad breaking the news to Mom and my sisters. They were overjoyed to get free of me. Dad also explained that they were poor and that I might never be able to attend school. Mom shrugged her eyes and replied, "Who cares? Just drop him off tomorrow." I stood paralyzed in the corner, clutching the curtain. Regardless of how much I despised my family, I was terrified and hurt to leave them. I had tears in my eyes but did not cry out. They were so thrilled and enjoying the occasion, they forgot I was there. When Dad saw me in tears, he walked forward, patted my back, and told me to pack my belongings. "We'll leave tomorrow morning to join your new family." When he said this, I cried out loudly, but I realized it was not heard. So I went to my room, packed my belongings, and prayed that my new family was less evil. The following day, Dad drove me to the next town. I don't remember exactly what emotions I was experiencing, but I wasn't crying. Perhaps I was simply numb as I left the house and throughout the drive. My new family was definitely poor. They lived in a little house with only one room. They'd converted the warehouse into my room. I had no problems because they at least tried to offer me a room. I've never had my own room or bed. My sisters had a bed and I was put up on a cot in the corner of their room, with my stuff stored in a small closet. This room was smaller than ours, yet it was comfortable. My new parents, Mary and John, were loving and caring, but I came from a troubled home. I had never felt that love before. Yes, I witnessed my parents' affection for my sisters, but never for me. I used to question my new parents' intentions and assumed their love was only transitory. I tried not to become attached to them for fear of being abandoned as well. You are aware of childhood trauma. It took me several months to discover that they truly loved me and were not putting on a front. Yes, my school was discontinued that year since my parents relocated me in the middle of the school year, but my new parents promised to enroll me the next year. I saw how they went above and above to save money so that I could attend school. That's when I started to love them back. My adoption proved to be a blessing in disguise. My original parents never showed up after sending me to Mary and John. To be honest, I was relieved because I was treated as if I were still a boy. Mary and John were extremely hardworking people. They worked 14 to 16 hours a day on their food truck. The vehicle was located right outside of their apartment, so I was not left alone when they were working. I could see them directly through my bedroom window. Eventually, I began spending my days on the truck, assisting them with everything I could. When I was admitted to the school, I dedicated all of my time to my studies while also assisting them with chores when I had time. I was a little older than 10 when I assisted John at the cash desk. I was pretty adept at calculating. I learned business and accounting from a young age. After high school, I wanted to run their business full-time, but they both insisted that I finish college first. They used their funds to fund it. They were becoming too old and frail to operate a food truck. I wanted to assume their responsibilities the same way they took mine, but they told me that they could handle it for a few more years and that I should go to college. I studied business and accounting in college because I aspired to be an entrepreneur. My graduation day was the best day of my life. John and Mary were over the moon. They even asked my biological parents to attend the convocation, but they did not show up. After college, I hoped to manage the food van while Mary and John retired, but they had other ideas for me. They had acquired substantial savings and turned them up to me. This act overwhelmed me. John stated they could survive on their own for a few more years, but he didn't want to involve me in their business. He provided me with the money to start my own business. I didn't want to waste their hard-earned money, so I used my business skills wisely. I looked for a tiny local restaurant in a good neighborhood that was struggling with sales. After several rejections, I ultimately persuaded the owner to lease the property to me on a profit-sharing basis. I started from scratch, refurbishing the facility and creating a menu tailored to the likes of millennials and Generation Z. I focused on providing the greatest service to my consumers. Sales increased dramatically within a year and I doubled my initial investment. 4 years later, I own 3 cafes in town, all of which are successful. I moved Mary and John into a better apartment and obtained a little room for myself, as I'd been living with them up until then. I asked them to retire and get rid of their food truck, but they insisted on keeping it for their own satisfaction. When I left their house with my bag all those years ago, I had no idea I would one day graduate from college. But here I am running a restaurant chain in town. Fast forward to last month, it was a regular day at work. I was working at the cash register of one of my eateries when I noticed a familiar face. It seemed like I'd seen a ghost. It was my biological father. I saw him after almost 2 decades. He appeared pale and sickly. He stepped across the counter with a big smile and hugged me. I didn't say anything because the restaurant was crowded, and instead escorted him to a corner. Seeing his face brought back all the traumatic memories from my youth. I couldn't have written about my past in such depth if he hadn't reappeared in my life. He expressed his pride in my accomplishment and happiness. I stood there, stunned, unable to answer. He stated that he had been traveling by and saw John, who informed him of my success. He stated that he will bring my mother to meet me over the weekend. I remained silent, and he left shortly after. That evening, I told John that I did not want to meet my biological parents, who abandoned me because I was a boy. John and Mary were aware of my rough childhood. I wanted to flee and hide for the weekend, but Mary persuaded me to forgive them and go forward. I finally agreed to meet them on the condition that John and Mary accompany me. My original parents came to John's house, and I expected them to apologize for what they did to me. But to my surprise, they showed no sorrow. Instead, they detailed the favors they had performed for me. My mother told me that I should be grateful to them for finding me wonderful parents like John and Mary, who raised me to be successful. I was stunned. I wanted to lash out at them, but Mary took my hand and told me to remain calm. I politely replied, "I am grateful to have John and Mary as parents." The entire encounter seemed awkward and uncomfortable for me. The next day, I got a call from my biological mother. I didn't recognize her voice. It was the first time she'd contacted me in 20 years. She was not phoning to reconcile. She asked for money. She stated that my father had lost his regular job and had been working on a contract basis for several years. She also lost her job since no restaurant wanted to hire a 50-year-old waitress. They were hurting financially. I inquired how much she needed. She replied $20,000 would be sufficient. She had borrowed the money from her friends over the previous 3 months to buy groceries and run the property. Her pals now wanted the money back, but she didn't have it. I hung up the phone, stating I'd think about it and get back. The truth is, no matter how much I despise them, I feel horrible that people are pursuing them for money. Sometimes I think she's simply taking advantage of me, but what if they really need help? I'd feel horrible letting them go through embarrassment, especially considering I have the money. Update 1. Thank you for all of your remarks and congratulations. People have different feelings about helping my mother with $20,000. I discussed it with Mary and John. Mary was pleased that I was considering assisting my parents, but she also advised me to be cautious. John stated that it was my money, thus the decision was mine, but he shared the same concern. What if they were attempting to manipulate my emotions? After much deliberation, I chose to seize my first and only shot with my biological parents. I transferred the money to her account. It felt nice at first to aid my family, despite the fact that they had mistreated me. But, as I suspected, they began to exploit me financially, so I quickly recognized I had been correct in my caution. My mother called me back a week after I had sent the money. I responded with conflicting sentiments. She thanked me for my assistance and then stated, "Your sisters want to see you. When do you think you can make it?" For a time, I believed they truly wanted me back in their life. Regardless of all my parents did to me, I never despised my sisters. As a child, I may have been nasty to them, but I never blamed them for what happened. It was not their fault. I often wondered if my parents abandoned me because they were poor, not because they were nasty. I informed Mom that we could meet on Sunday and I would drive home. But she interjected and said, "Why don't we meet somewhere outside?" I didn't think much of it at the moment, but agreed. She agreed to text me the place and time. However, after the call, I felt nervous. Why didn't they want me to come to their home? Yes, it doesn't matter where we meet, but after so many years, wouldn't you rather meet your family at home than in a restaurant? Later, she emailed me information on an expensive restaurant. I didn't think about it at the time since I was still upset that they hadn't asked me home. When I got to the restaurant, they were already present. My sisters ran to hug me, and for a minute, I was overjoyed to see them after so many years. We were having fun catching up until the menu arrived. They began ordering the most expensive dishes on the menu. When they inquired what he wanted, my father smiled and replied, "Order the most costly one. My son is a big man now." That was a very petty thing to say. If John or Mary had said that, I would have been proud. But hearing it from my biological parents felt cruel and manipulative. There was little I could do. I sat there, watching them enjoy themselves, knowing full well that they were draining my money. Yes, I did pay the bill too. I had wild thoughts about ghosting them before the bill arrived, but that would have been too cruel. Right there and there I told myself I would never fall into their emotional trap again. I stayed cold for the remainder of the evening, and I doubt anyone noticed. When we were leaving, they did not invite me home. Instead, my older sister inquired, "So where are we dining next?" I feigned a smile and responded, "Nowhere," before waving them goodbye. When I returned, I told Mary about my greedy relatives. She was shocked. Mary, a gentle and independent woman, found their behavior troubling. She encouraged me not to act foolishly again and to concentrate on my life rather than worrying about others. I took her advice to heart. A week later, my sisters called, but I did not answer. My mother called, but I also ignored her. It has been 2 months since then, and they have stopped contacting me. I believe they finally received the message that I do not want them in my life. Update 2. Hello everyone, thank you for all the love. As I indicated in my last essay, I stopped responding to my sisters and biological parents after realizing they only wanted me for my money. My mother called me again recently, after nearly 5 months. I noticed the phone ring and answered it on impulse. She began with a small conversation, asking about me and my career, but it sounded artificial and pretentious. I couldn't stand it any longer and inquired, "What do you want?" She took a big breath and explained, "Your sisters had to drop out of college. Because Dad couldn't afford their tuition, they asked me to sponsor their college education." I flipped out. My mother urged me to calm down, saying, "They are your sisters, your family, and you should help them." I was at work at the time and did not want to disrupt my day, so I hung up. She called me back that evening. I had ignored her calls a few times, but it bothered me. I recognized that ignoring her was not the solution. When she called again, I answered. She responded, "Your sisters are really pleased to return to their college, so how are we going to handle this? Will you pay all at once or by semester? I advise you to transfer the entire sum to me, and I will handle the tuition payments each semester. That way, you won't have to worry about anything." I was stunned. I replied, "Whoa, hold on. I am not going to make any payments." She sounded genuinely astonished, as if she had not expected no to be an option. She asked, "What do you mean you won't pay everything at once?" "It's great, we can also pay in installments." I reiterated, "I'm not paying anyway. My sister's schooling is not my obligation, especially since my parents abandoned me and never followed up with me. Now you're only talking to me because you want to take my money." She erupted with rage and lost control. "Do not forget that we gave birth to you. We are responsible for your current state. Your father secured a suitable guardian for you, and now that it is time to repay us, you must accept your obligations. Your sisters and parents are your responsibility, and you must take care of them all." I had a lot to say, but I knew it would be lost on deaf, egocentric ears. So I calmly responded, "Yes, I owe a lot to my parents, John and Mary. They deserve all credit for my success. As for you, I am not sure who you are. None of my documents bear your names, nor do I have any images of you. So I do not think I know you at all." She began throwing insults at me, but I simply said, "Wrong number, lady," and disconnected up. Call me selfish, harsh, or whatever you want, but I am not going to spend my hard-earned money on my so-called family. They were never my family. They abandoned me when I was only 6 years old. And yes, I did see some comments on my last post on why I called John and Mary by their names rather than Mom and Dad. Actually, I call them Mom and Dad now. It didn't happen right away when I moved home with them, but as time went and they worked hard to provide for me, love me, and get me into school, I grew devoted to them. For the sake of clarity in this narrative, I referred to them as John and Mary. But to me, they are my true mother and father. I don't call my biological parents anything because they don't exist to me. I discovered a secret warning from my boyfriend's ex and the terrifying truth was revealed. Original post, August 27th, 2024 throwaway account because I don't want my boyfriend to find this. I posted this elsewhere but thought this subreddit could help too. I, 28F, and my BF, 30M, who we'll call Steve, have been together for 2 years and have been living together for 8 months. I was cleaning our apartment when I found a note in the back of a cabinet. For contact's sake, I'll copy it below. Dear Steve's future girlfriend, I know it's you reading this because he'd never clean back here. I'm putting this here because I'm leaving him soon and want to warn you about him. He will not clean. He will not listen. He will make everything feel like it's your fault. It's not your fault, he's just an incompetent man. I'm leaving him, I suggest you do the same. Best wishes, Natalia. Name changed. I read the note and brought it to show to him and hear his response. He immediately ripped it up and said not to listen to it, that she was crazy and untrustworthy. I told him that the fact that he hasn't found it in the 5 years since they broke up is a red flag to me because it does mean he's never cleaned back there and that he has been cleaning less and less since I moved in. He told me that it wasn't a problem before the note. This is just his ex continuing to manipulate and ruin his life, and I was letting it work. We continued to argue along the same lines, and I eventually left to spend the night at a friend's place. Steve has been a great boyfriend so far. He gets along with my family. He has given me gifts and flowers and always tells me how much he loves me. He's not wrong that the cleaning hasn't really been brought up before. The note made me realize it had been less and less and that we needed to have a full conversation. He texted me afterwards saying he's sorry that I felt like I had to leave, but that it's an asshole move for me to take a note over our 2-year relationship and to leave him and our pets alone. I don't know what to do or what to believe right now. I'm contemplating trying to find and reach out to Natalia. Her name in real life is pretty unique, so I think I could find her. Steve thinks I should come back home and let it go, that his past should affect our future. I feel like I could be the asshole because everything Steve has said about Natalia does make it sound like she was manipulative and petty throughout their relationship, but I don't know what to trust. Edit. I realized I didn't clarify enough about the points, especially the cleaning. Thought I'd add it here. When we moved in together 8 months ago, the cleaning was 50/50ths. Since then, he's been doing things less and less, and I'd say it's at like 70/30ths. Maybe 60/40ths if he listens to me right away. It depends on the week. I have to remind him to do things like bring his plates to the sink or take out the trash, and I didn't have to before. The dishes will pile up unless I do them, to the point he's had leftover food mold on the plates. I'm not a confrontational person, so I was just asking him to fix it when it came up. The note made me reflect on it more and try to have an actual full conversation, and I will say I didn't feel listened to when I talked to him about it. I tried to use the note to start a conversation about cleaning, and he got so stuck on that I was listening to his ex instead of him, that he wouldn't listen to what I think are valid concerns. He thinks I'm letting the note have confirmation bias, so no matter what he says I'll think he's in the wrong. Also, I didn't leave him permanently. This all happened yesterday and I only spent one night at a friend's because I didn't feel like our conversation was going anywhere last night and he wouldn't let me sleep until I let it go. I'm going back today and wanted to get advice and feedback before I do. Edit 2. I appreciate all these comments with advice. I'm heading back to our place now. My plan is to first apologize for immediately bringing him the note without thinking of his feelings and validate that it's hard to have an ex's message found. That being said, you're all right that I've been letting the cleaning stuff get away. I don't want to be in a relationship where I have to ask him repeatedly to clean. It was pointed out to me that he should have cleaned the shelves during his move from his ex's place. The fact that it hasn't been touched in 5 years is forcing me to take it seriously. I don't want to throw away 2 years, so I'm going to ask him to come up with some clear cleaning expectations with me and designated chores. I will make it clear that cleaning is absolutely a deal breaker for me. It's his decision on how he wants to respond. I'll try to update you all. Again, thank you so much for the advice. Update. I followed your advice from the last post and tried to have a calm discussion with Steve. When I apologized for confronting him with the note, he seemed to take that as an admission of guilt and refused to listen to anything else. I had come up with a list of specific instances of not cleaning like many of you suggested, and he said I was using lists just like his manipulative ex did. So yeah, the crazy ex thing you all said was a red flag was definitely true. When I realized the conversation wasn't going anywhere, he even tried to block me from leaving. That's when I knew it was done and left immediately. 2 years down the drain, but I'm glad I had the wake-up call before it was too late. I will let him cool off and then will ask my brother to come with me to grab my things while he's not there. He has a strict work schedule, so I think it'll work out. I am planning on leaving a note there, but probably a little longer with the advice to not show it to him. I'm leaving it in the exact same place, so if he doesn't learn his lesson about cleaning, it'll come to haunt him. All he has to do is clean. The biggest surprise out of all of this is that I didn't reach out to Natalia, she reached out to me. Apparently he borrowed his friend's phone to call her, screaming that she's ruining his life still. The fact that she blocked him and he still had her number memorized just further confirms he was the crazy ex, not her. Natalia found me on social media and wanted to make sure I was okay and was especially concerned that he'd gaslight me like he tried with her. I thanked her for leaving me the note and saving me time. We scheduled coffee for Thursday afternoon. I wanted to thank you all again for the advice, especially the person who posted the Love is Respect website. I took the healthy relationship quiz after our conversation and it wasn't great. You called out how he was weaning me into an unhealthy relationship so well. For now, my friend said I can stay until I find a new place. I have emergency savings and a decent job, so I'm in a privileged place when it comes to this messy breakup and I'm just trying to feel grateful for that. Just posted my final update separately. Thank you all for everything. Relevant comments. Commenter. So, what is your experience with #2 and #3 of Natalia's notes? Did you see some truth in her words there with your own past experiences with Steve? OOP, he does listen to me, I think. Like when he gets me flowers, he knows my favorite. We have some hobbies in common and love to talk about them. I feel like the most he's not listened to is in this situation because he refused to get past the fact that I'm listening to his ex over him. That being said, since we moved in together, I do feel like he's putting in less effort when it comes to starting conversations or initiating quality time to #3. This is hard for me to answer. I think I can be a people pleaser and tend to think things are my fault anyway, but he's never directly said that's your fault when it comes to conflict. OOP responds to the issues she has with her boyfriend's cleaning after showing him the note. OP, thank you for your feedback. I'm looking for a balanced perspective, so I appreciate this comment. I did have an issue with his lack of cleaning and have asked him repeatedly to clean up after himself, and it hasn't really improved. I agree that I should have sat down to have this full conversation about it earlier instead of using this note to do so. I'm questioning our relationship based on his response to the note, not the note itself, as he raised his voice a bit. Also, other people commented about the letting me go to sleep thing, and I'm now also realizing that's not okay. I'm not sure what to do. I will go back to our place in an hour and I'm trying to come up with ideas for the conversation. I agree I should apologize for immediately bringing him the note and trying to talk about the cleaning instead of comforting him that someone in his past was playing games. Update, August 28, 2024. As you can tell by my original post, I like to do things right away. It was definitely a mistake to bring him the note right away, but doing the things I did this morning right away was not a mistake as it allowed me to save my pets. First, I want to respond to the comments saying I broke up a 2-year relationship over a note and chores. No, I broke up a 2-year relationship because when I tried to come up with solutions to an unequal situation, his response was to yell and try to convince me there was no problem except me. The final straw was when he physically blocked me from leaving the house after he was screaming at me. That is not okay, and no one should stay with a man who responds to conflict like that. The actual update. I wound up texting the post to Natalia last night and she thought it was great. She, like some of you, asked me about the pets. For context, one of the things Steve and I connected on was our love for little creatures. It's why I thought he was such a great guy, because if he could take such intricate care of his lizard, he could do the same with me. I was very wrong. He has one lizard he bought before me, and then we bought 2 frogs together. I have a snake I brought with me when I moved in. I was planning on waiting until he cooled down to go grab my things and the frogs and snake, thinking he would never hurt them, but Natalia changed my mind. She said he could get destructive when he's mad and was concerned about the safety of my little guys. I immediately knew I couldn't wait until later this week and reached out for a meeting with the landlord early this morning. I wound up FaceTiming with Natalia last night and we had a long discussion. Natalia is a lawyer and told me that in our state, landlords are required to let me get out of the lease I signed in cases of domestic violence. She also told me that his yelling, gaslighting, and refusing to let me leave are all types of abuse. It's definitely hard for me to sit with that. But the Love is Respect relationship quiz helped me also realize that a bit more last night. Apparently his constant messaging and control over what I wore and when were signs of abuse too. Anyway, this morning Natalia volunteered to come talk to the landlord with me alongside my brother. As soon as he heard the word lawyer, he was on top of it and said I could break the lease, but would still have to pay for all of August even though I'm leaving 3 days early. I felt like that was fair. He also messaged Steve to say the apartment needed to be empty for emergency maintenance all day today so I could pack my things. Steve messaged back that he was at work all day and wouldn't be home until 6 p.m. When I got into the apartment, it was a mess. He had broken my dishes that I had brought with me on the ground and left the shards laying about. My clothes were ripped up and scattered around our room. It was disgusting and heartbreaking. He left his lizard alone, but opened the tank doors for our frogs and my snake. Luckily, the frogs were still chilling in their enclosure, but my snake had gotten loose. This made me the most mad, as she could have gotten cut on the broken plates. I feel so fortunate that she was just hiding in the closet corner and I was able to pack her up safely in her enclosure again. All my things are packed and I'm writing this as my brother drives me back to my friend's house right now. Natalia told me that she actually left 3 notes, one in the cabinet, one on the underside of the vacuum, and one in the crumb catcher of the toaster. While we were there, we checked to see if the notes were still there. The one on the vacuum was, but it looks like Steve did clean out the crumb catcher at least once in the past 5 years. He never told me he had already found a note in our conversations, so it caught me by surprise. Natalia and I left the vacuum note as is and replaced the cabinet one. I wasn't comfortable leaving my name on a new note, so my addition was a handout on healthy versus unhealthy relationships and a QR code to the quiz that woke me up. I'll put it in the comments. I'm not sure if I can have an outside link. Natalia said if he didn't find the notes in those 5 years, especially after the move, he probably won't find them again. I'm inclined to agree, especially given he did find one but then didn't even clean the rest of the house to see if there was any more. Steve doesn't make sense to me, and seeing the state of the apartment really woke me up to the fact that I have no idea who he is. The Steve I knew would never put animals in danger, but I don't think I really ever knew Steve. To the people saying it's pathetic that I broke up my relationship because of chores and Reddit, I encourage you to reflect on the subtle ways that abuse starts. This Reddit thread woke me up to it and gave me the resources to get out safely before it got any worse. I also made an appointment for a therapist. I'm very lucky that my job has good insurance, so I should be able to work through this relationship, and I'm hoping to focus on boundaries and my people-pleasing habits, so I never find myself in this situation again. To the people wishing that Natalia and I would get together, we had a good laugh about it. Natalia is engaged to a wonderful man who cleans, listens, and reflects. She said there's a phenomenon that when people break up with their awful ex, their soulmate can quickly follow. I'm hoping that's true. Regardless, I do think I got a good friend out of this, especially since Natalia is a snake mom too. This is my final update. I hope if you learn anything from my experience, it's that abuse doesn't start right away. First there's love bombing, gifts, and pretty words. And then slowly, they test how much you'll put up with. You should never have to put up with anything, especially moldy freaking plates. TLDR, after ending things due to his behavior, Steve destroyed our apartment and let my snake loose, but I was able to get off the lease and get my things with Natalia's help. Now I'm safe and I'm looking for a new place to live. Relevant comments. Commenter. Natalia received the assignment, demonstrate sisterhood, and ace the test. I am so sorry that Steve proved all of us, including Natalia, right on how crappy he is. Can you go after him for the destruction of property? OP. Honestly, I just want to put this behind me. Most of the clothes were ones he bought me. I thought they were sweet gifts, but looking back on it, I'm realizing he pushed my style out for the one he prefers. He liked to dress me exactly the way he wanted, so I'm okay leaving the clothes behind. I can get new dishes and new clothes that fit me. I have my pets, and that's all that matters to me. Commenter. The Steve I knew would never put animals in danger, but I don't think I really ever knew Steve. That really freaks me the fuck out in these posts. The idea that you can know someone enough to start working on a life together but not actually know them. It makes me wonder what % of abusers masking do it specifically on purpose to trap someone, and what % just happen to have nothing trigger their worst instincts, behaviors. It's hard to imagine the bulk of stealth abusers being patient masterminds working a long con. Commenter. But it looks like Steve did clean out the crumb catcher at least once in the past 5 years. Steve probably didn't have a choice for that one. The paper and crumbs mix would have started smoking at some point. OOP on her snake. OOP. A western hognose. She's the cutest. Her name is Raspberry because she's pinkish in color. My wife cheated with my stepbrother, got pregnant, and I told her parents. Now she's cut off from her inheritance. I, 34M, and my wife, 29F, have been married for 2 years. Our relationship has been rather ordinary. We met at a work event many years ago, became friends for a few years, then realized we had feelings for one another and began dating. We dated for 3 years before I asked her to marry me, so we've been together for about 6 years. We never had any issues, either while courting or after we married. She is gorgeous, intelligent, and a wonderful partner for me. I have done my best to be a good husband to her, and we are happy together. Around 6 months ago, my stepbrother Darren, 28M, was sacked from his work. Instead of looking for another career, he opted to spend some time traveling and finding himself. Darren has always been unpredictable and spontaneous. My parents had a difficult time convincing him to go to college and earn a degree. He is constantly full of wacky ideas that he needs to be talked out of, but being dismissed from his job because he was intoxicated during a business meeting is serious. Despite his history, he resolved to quit drinking. Despite my fears that he would abandon this project halfway through, I attempted to be supportive for my father's sake. My parents divorced while I was a child, and my father married Darren's mother when I was a teenager. So when Darren asked if he could stay at my house for a few weeks to tour New York, I wasn't sure how to say no. I was suspicious and unwilling to do it, but when my father and stepmother urged me to let him stay, I couldn't say no. I questioned my wife, and she said she was fine with it, so I grudgingly gave in. Darren came to live with us 2 months ago. I made it clear that he could not bring anyone into the flat, and that even if he could leave and return any time he pleased, it should not disrupt our sleep. Surprisingly, he agreed with all of my rules. For the first few days, he stayed out virtually all night, and I even saw him arrive as late as 7 a.m., when I was already up and preparing for work. Aside from that, he was fairly polite, having supper with me and my wife at our home and even cooking for us on a few occasions. I was pleasantly surprised. This was not the Darren I'd known my entire life. My wife and I had scheduled a weekend trip to Vegas the second weekend Darren was staying with us because I had worked there. We told Darren to take care of the place until we returned. Everything was planned, but my wife developed a severe stomach flu at the last minute. It was Thursday night and we were meant to leave the next morning. We were both really unhappy, but we assumed she would go if she felt better. Unfortunately, her illness worsened the next morning, and by the time we were scheduled to depart, she was too ill to travel. I tried to reschedule my job commitment and postpone our trip, but it was too late, and I needed to travel. I felt terrible about leaving her in that state, but I knew Darren would be there in case her health worsened. He offered to stay at home and cook her meals as well. I vowed to return as early as possible on Saturday morning and then left. Looking back, I can't believe I didn't see that coming. So I went to Vegas by myself, returned the next day, and found that my wife was doing better. I didn't think much of it at the time, but after that weekend, I noticed Darren was home more frequently than usual. Previously he went out every day, but now he hasn't left the flat in several days. I asked whether everything was fine, and he just shrugged, claiming he was trying to save his money. I didn't think much of it at first, but as time passed, I began to notice more things that stood out. When I returned from work one day, I discovered that my wife had already arrived home. Apparently, she had taken a half day off due to a headache and forgot to notify me. Another day, I arrived home early and noticed Darren and my wife entering the house together. They stated that they had just met outside the building. This could just be a coincidence, but I had a horrible feeling about it. I had never questioned my wife's devotion before, and while Darren was a messy person, I didn't think he could do something so heinous as that. Still, I couldn't ignore the impression that something was off. I knew I couldn't accuse them of anything without evidence, and doing so would cause upheaval in my family, which I wasn't prepared to cope with. So I took a straightforward approach. I asked Darren how long he planned on staying with us. I reminded him that while it was fantastic to have him around, he should think about his future moves. Thankfully, he caught the message and stated he'd be leaving within a week. My wife was in the room during the chat, but she said nothing, which made me uneasy. Darren moved out, and I attempted to ignore my misgivings, concentrating on my marriage rather than worrying about the worst-case situation. Things improved after he departed, and I began to believe I had been overly paranoid. I was mortified to think that my wife would do something like that, especially because she had been the perfect spouse all these years. However, around 2 weeks ago, something happened. We discovered that my wife was pregnant, 2 months to be exact. You probably know where this is headed. When Darren moved in with us 2 months ago, I felt sick to my stomach. I'll offer you some context. I am a few years older than my wife, as I previously stated. By the time I was 30, I was ready to settle down and establish my own family. When my wife and I first started dating, I knew she was the one for me and wanted to marry her. However, she believed she was too young to have children and wanted to wait a few years before making that decision. Though it wasn't what I desired, I approved of her choice. We always took precautions since we decided to wait until she was 30 to start looking for children. My wife always insisted we be very careful since her body reacts poorly to hormonal birth control and she is not on any tablets. I also always utilized protection. Accidents do happen, of course, but I could not get over the sense that something was off. I felt the timing to be unsettling. She said she wanted to keep the baby, that although this was unplanned, it was a good thing and we ought to be glad. Long since I had desired children. Under different conditions I would have been ecstatic, but instead I was in excruciating pain. Though I attempted to seem content to my wife, I don't think I have ever felt worse. Uncertain of what to do, I wanted no one to criticize me, thus I couldn't talk to any of my friends about it. Nevertheless, I couldn't get rid of the bad ideas and emotions. I knew I couldn't continue living in total anguish after about 1 week. I had to face my bride. I knew this would have a terrible effect on our marriage, and should I turn out to be mistaken, she might never pardon me. but I kept thinking of the worst. The prospect of her carrying the baby of my stepbrother made me sick. After our first visit, completed several blood tests and procedures, all I could feel was total devastation. I decided to talk to her as I could no longer handle it and got ready for the worst. I told her I had to talk to her about something quite crucial about a week ago during supper. She wanted to know straight away. Though afraid, I aimed to be as direct as I could. I apologized for feeling this way, but I questioned her whether she actually carried my child. My question seemed to her startled. Her whole face flushed red, and she began shouting, accusing me of being a monster for questioning her and committing something so terrible. She said she had never strayed from me. She wondered where all this was coming from, and I told her it was too much of a coincidence she was 2 months pregnant, the same length of time Darren had left. She became much more irate as a result and began yelling even more. Seeing the situation becoming bad, I tried to cool her down and get her to pay attention to me. I told her it hurt for me to live with these uncertainties. I told her about the events that occurred during Darren's stay, wishing I had no harbors of uncertainty and felt something was off. She seemed to relax a little and assured me she knew I had questions, but she also advised me to believe her and our marriage would be stronger. Though I felt awful, I told her I wished I could just ignore these ideas. Having attempted, I wanted a paternity test following the birth if there was really nothing to worry about. I even said I knew how tough this must be for her, but I had to be sure for my own peace of mind. She seemed to be really more extreme than I had expected, so clearly I didn't expect her to be entirely cool with this and felt she might flare out a little. If she was angry before, the reference to a paternity test sent her off. She said I was nasty and she couldn't believe I would force her to go through something so embarrassing over my crazy thoughts. Though I attempted to remain cool, really seeing her so against the concept made me feel as though my suspicions were vindicated and I started to get enraged. I told her this was an ultimatum, that if she disagreed, I doubted we could be together. She admitted she needed time to consider it, and this seemed to help her somewhat relax. That evening we slept in different rooms. We said nothing to one another the next morning before reporting to work. I fantasized the worst-case scenario as the truth all day. The remainder of the week reflected that. She would ignore me and arrive home late at night. She grew upset every time I tried to chat to her, so I finally gave up. I had no notion she was merely deciding on her next action. When I got up in the morning last Thursday, I discovered she had not returned home the evening before. She never responded when I texted her many times. I had to report to work, but I was so agitated that I couldn't concentrate and so left early for home. I waited hours for her, but I grew rather concerned when she still hadn't returned home by 9 p.m. and would not answer my calls. Not sure what else to do, I asked her assistant at work about her. My surprise was that she hadn't been to work and had taken 2 personal days. Her assistant expressed amazement at my ignorance of this. I was somewhat concerned at that point and phoned some of her friends to see whether she was with any of them. I started picturing the worst when all of them claimed they hadn't heard from her. I fretted about her leaving me or about something happening to her. I asked my mother-in-law, MIL, a last resort, whether she was with her. She wasn't, but upon learning my wife had vanished for 2 days, my MIL started to get really concerned. She promised to try to get to her and let me know whether there was any update. Should she still be inaccessible, we agreed to phone 911. I was completely terrified in the next half hour, but suddenly my wife called. She stated she was absolutely fine, wanted some time to sort things out, and that I had no need to stress her out for no cause or involve her mother. She sounded even angry, very apathetic. I became enraged when she showed no regard for freaking me out, but I calmed down and asked her where she was and when she was returning. She hung up, then declared she would be returning early the next morning. Frayed and somewhat angry, I went to bed. I considered spending some time apart from her. I had no idea what lay ahead of me. The next morning she woke me up and seemed especially content. She stated she was fixing a problem when I asked her where she had been the day before. Trust me when I say I spent weeks considering every conceivable scenario that might go wrong. What she said next was crazier than anything I could have imagined. She explained that this pregnancy was killing our marriage and causing foolish questions in my head, hence she decided to rescue our marriage by means of an abortion. She met my eyes squarely and stated, now I had no reason to question her loyalty, we could start our marriage anew. I looked astounded. I had never used that word and really meant it before in my life. I simply asked her if she was kidding after just staring at her. She stated she was totally serious and hoped I could unwind now and stop allowing stupid worries to disturb me anymore. That served as my breaking point. After several more minutes of staring at her, I stood up and departed. Spending another second with her worried me that I would have some kind of mental collapse. She started to follow me, but if she wanted peace, I advised her to avoid me. I guess my tone was severe enough to stop her. I phoned my attorney on the way out of the building to let her know I was divorcing my wife and needed to start the process immediately. I also scheduled a meeting for the following morning and advised her we had to make sure my wife missed a penny of my money. Though I had no idea exactly how things would turn out, I knew what I had to do. I asked Darren where he was when I phoned. He claimed to be in Atlanta, someplace. I asked him not to waste my time. Simply admit that they had slept together. I was divorcing my wife. He said nothing for a few minutes, then simply apologized to me. That helped me too. I understood there was nothing else to say. For the evening I checked into a hotel and got ready for what I knew was in store. I woke up the next morning, headed straight to my attorney, and gave her all the specifics, the infidelity, the abortion, everything. She claimed that we did have a shot, even though it's tough to have a clean divorce with no alimony unless both sides come to a mutual understanding, as my wife has a high-paying job of her own and is most certainly the one at fault here. Really, I was more concerned with the cause than with the money. With this woman I was finished. She could be very frigid, which astounded me. It seemed like I had lived all these years among strangers. The person I loved and married would not be able to do anything this crazy. She had slept with my stepbrother, but there was still a possibility she was pregnant with my baby. Now we would never know. Changing my plans to suit her wants, and doing everything I could to be a decent husband, after almost 6 years in this marriage, this is what I received. Inquiring whether she was at work, I phoned her assistant. She became. I urged her not to tell my wife I phoned and lied about arranging a surprise for her. I then headed home, loaded as many of her items as I could into 3 suitcases, and arranged them in the hall. Changing our locks and phoning a locksmith came next. I wanted no sight of her. I wanted her out of my house, gone. Not wanting to be home when she got back, I then stuffed some of my own items in an overnight bag and headed back to my hotel. It was almost 5 p.m. by the time everything was finished, and I was worn out, physical and psychological. I slept on the bed and nodded out as soon as I got to my motel. My phone rang when I woke up. In fact, it was my wife, but I chose to treat her with the same indifference that she had shown me the day she obtained the abortion behind my back. She persisted in phoning, and I ignored a million books that she recommended. Regarding all that, I had nothing to say to her. She stopped at last after over an hour of unrelenting calls. She had apparently given up, but then I received a text from Darren stating she had contacted him and inquired as to whether I had spoken with him. It was finished, he informed her. I knew everything. Again over text, he apologized. I couldn't care less. Not texting him either, I started considering what to do next. The following phase was where I might have gone a little too far, but I was devastated and embarrassed. What else to do eluded me. One thing you should know about my wife is that she is from a quite traditional Southern background. They do things a particular way over there, and since we were married, she has been under pressure to have children. I had been on her side at every family gathering for years, helping to back our slow approach. I never once said that her desire to wait was the sole reason we weren't trying for children. I knew that her family would not be very happy if they discovered she had an abortion and cheated. I thus decided to phone my mother-in-law and simply be petty once in a lifetime. I gently went over everything with her and advised her that I was divorcing her daughter for betraying my confidence. She first doubted me and sounded embarrassed. About the abortion, I could show her the positive pregnancy test and the doctor's notes from our first appointment. Darren had previously acknowledged the affair. She may have her daughter clarify the rest. My wife was blowing up my phone in no time, exactly as I had anticipated. I tried to wait it out, but I ultimately picked up when she wouldn't stop after an hour and a half of unrelenting calling. Her answer was as predicted. She screamed I was ruining her life for no reason and she had nowhere to stay for the evening. She was beyond enraged. I informed her she was welcome to check into any hotel of her choice, but not to irritate me. I disregarded her attempts to prod me. She would be hearing from my lawyer shortly, and any correspondence from now on would go via our lawyers, I advised her. I also assured her that I would pack and deliver everything she desired wherever. She then told me she could forget about ever inheriting a cent from her parents, since her parents were quite enraged with her and declared she was no longer welcome in their family. From my in-laws, this was surprising. Although I expected them to be enraged, I did not believe they would act in this extreme manner. I obviously told my wife none of this. Rather, I advised her she should have considered this before turning around behind my back and that none of my concern was what her parents chose to do. Saying I shouldn't have dragged her parents into our marital troubles since now her life was shattered and she had nobody left, she labeled me immature and petty. I hung up on her and replied I couldn't care less. She then started texting me endlessly, calling every name under the sun, threatening to steal every dollar I had and cause me to repent everything. My father-in-law called me as well. He apologized to me for what his daughter had done. He was embarrassed of her. Hoping this would teach her a lesson, he informed me they were done letting her get away with anything. I was more than glad to provide him with the doctor's reports he requested. That was a couple hours ago, and my wife keeps contacting me. I'm thinking about just blocking her. But somewhere in the back of my mind there is a niggling voice reminding me I might have gone too far and ought to have kept this between the two of us. Although I absolutely have second thoughts about the divorce and I don't regret shutting her out of my apartment. I realize what a major blow it is to her to be cut off from her parents. Am I the asshole for telling my in-laws about my wife's adultery and abortion? Update 1. I want to thank everyone who helped me. Those of you who shared your own tales made me feel far less alone than I was feeling and also helped me relax about my response. Working through the divorce has not been simple. She is determined about receiving alimony and won't help me. We all know how complicated divorces can go, thus we have been trying to come to an understanding between us and avoid going to court. Unfortunately, it looks like she is handling this as an assault against her ego and does not give practicalities any thought. I am quite happy I had the wisdom to evict her from the apartment before she could get the pregnancy test and ultrasonic records, which I currently have with me. I have also discussed the overall matter with Darren. Though I am furious with him, he claims he will help and even testify if he has to. He has also blocked my wife on all conceivable platforms and avoided all interaction with her. He has apologized for what he did, not that his apology counts to me, but at least he isn't repeating her error as she did. Curiosity drove me to ask him specifics about the affair. He claimed it began the weekend I visited Paris and persisted for as long as he remained here. Reportedly, they also met a few times after he moved out. Regarding her pregnancy or abortion, he claimed he knew nothing. Though I am furious with him, I do need him to respond appropriately should things get that far off. Knowing that he depends on my dad financially, his funds have gone out. I also realize the only reason he is suddenly so thoughtful of my needs is clearly, my dad will be cut off completely should he exacerbate the problem in any form. According to my dad, Darren's lack of immediate cutoff is just a result of our maybe need for him should the divorce get messy. It hasn't been easy. I'm trying as hard as I can not let me snap at him. Apart from that, I have moved into my apartment. Otherwise, there's not any more positive news as yet. I cannot pretend to be sympathetic. I know exactly where she is. I am not likely to lose this flat as I have owned it for considerably longer than my marriage has lasted. For now, just that is all. I am preparing for the divorce to get more ugly. I have no other option. Once things calm down enough, I'll attempt to let you know people. Update 2. I am formally divorcing you people. My last update was 6 months ago, hence I have been really busy. Things have advanced with the divorce since then. Originally challenging, my wife changed her behavior following multiple pre-trial hearings, depositions, and settlement negotiations. It became evident that if we let this go to trial, it would only end badly for her. Darren answered under oath. Already, we had proof of her pregnancy. For her statement, we called in our OB/GYN. She supported us on everything. Especially exposing were the depositions. My wife had to respond to some difficult questions under oath, and her behavior, along with tail contradictions, only worked against her. Darren's deposition validated our suspicions. Although his apologies meant nothing to me, it was an important piece of proof. On his phone they also foolishly snapped some images in private situations during the encounter. She could not later on ignore the reality. We traveled to settlement conferences following the depositions. These were uncomfortable, but given her high-paying work and the strong proof of her infidelity, my wife's lawyers seemed to understand that pursuing alimony wouldn't be successful. Her request for alimony clearly wouldn't stand up in court. While we were ready to resolve things amicably, I wasn't going to be taken advantage of. My wife gave up at last. She committed herself to not claiming any alimony. Given her efforts during our marriage, the settlement also guaranteed that she would not get any more than what we decided upon. This was fair. I'm happy the last decision was taken without calling for a pointless trial that would have simply sapped my funds and time. She will have her own stuff. We have fairly split our shared assets. The settlement guarantees our ability to go on free from more entanglement. Though I am glad everything is over now, I cannot help but feel as though all of this has been a great waste of my time. Not only the divorce, but the entire marriage. I find it hard to believe I squandered time and effort and strayed from my intentions to start a family for someone who would not hesitate to toss it all aside for basically nothing. I appreciate your support and counsel all around. It has been really helpful at this difficult period. If someone else is experiencing something like this, keep strong and rely on your support system. Things will improve. Update 3. Although I'm not sure whether anyone is still interested, I wrote in this subreddit at the start of the year and it has been a few months since my last update. I heard from my dad a few hours ago. Not expecting much, I picked up and was genuinely perplexed about how to respond when he told me. Darren and my ex-wife apparently are seeing one other once more. I hadn't heard from any of them and didn't realize Darren came to the city after finding employment here. I suppose it was sufficient to reignite their love, and she apparently forgot all the slights she had aimed at him during the divorce. I get turned off. I feel duped and that someone made a fool of me. According to my dad, he has made it abundantly evident to Darren and my stepmother that he wants nothing to do with him going forward. At least, having my old dad by my side feels great. Still, that is that. I don't think I will have any more updates for you folks, as I hope I won't hear anything about this anymore. My mother's fiancé stole my $7,000 college savings, and my family used my dad's inheritance without telling me. My grandparents on my mother's side are making me a lot of hate after my mother and her fiancé were detained. I had good cause to call the cops on them, hence this happened. My mother and I never got along, particularly given that my dad died 10 years ago. Right now I'm 17. In a few months I should be beginning college. I realized I would have to work for myself and create my own plans since, sadly, I knew my mother would never have any money saved away for me. I started working at 14 years old. After school, I would work part-time. For 4 years, I had been saving to have at least some money left aside. I would also save it, as I usually get cash from my relatives on my birthdays as presents and occasionally on holidays. I was really glad to have almost $7,000 saved thus far. Of course, it was all in cash, and I kept it carefully stashed in a small wooden box my father had fashioned for me in a little nook of my cupboard. My mother never let me open a bank account, hence that was out of the question as I never had one. I never told my mother or anybody else about the money, hence I'm not sure how anyone came upon it. Still, a few days ago I discovered the box was absolutely empty. When I approached my mother about it, she informed me her fiancé had taken the money to put toward his new property. Finding out what had transpired sent me totally insane. My mom and her fiancé were on one side of the great argument raging in the home while I was on another. Ultimately, though, I am just 17 and they are in power right now, so I had to compromise. This was my life, hence the only thing I could do was walk up to my room, shut myself in, and spend hours crying as I would have to start over yet once more. Before college, I wasn't even sure if I could save enough money for anything. I felt so demoralized and totally lost. That day I formed my mental picture. Since it cannot go unpacked, I was planning to exact revenge on them. Though it was a really large choice, fortunately I was able to extract revenge exactly 3 days later. They have now been arrested and are paying for the crime they did. My sole issue with this whole situation is that my always on my side grandparents are now against me, and it just doesn't make sense anymore. For the past 2 years, my mother's fiancé, I'll call him Rob, has been in my life. I have despised every single second of it since he is simply among the most horrible persons I have ever known. I would even consider him to be abusive. Clearly vocally and emotionally rather than physically. Usually my mother takes the most of it, but sometimes he loses his patience with me too and says anything that comes to mind. He curses me out, tries his very best to make me cry like my mother, and becomes even more enraged when he discovers I don't care. This causes him to lose even more control of his tongue and what he says. My mother never bothers to defend me. After my dad went away, my mother did not date anyone for the first couple of years. Then she met Rob later. He was polite and reasonable for the first few months, but he began displaying his actual colors after their first major argument. 6 months into their marriage, he had moved in with us and begun controlling my mother. He could hardly hang on any work and was a deadbeat, no-good imbecile. Contextually, he is in his mid to late 30s and still depends on his parents for money sometimes since he has utterly poor financial sense and wastes more money than he makes. He borrows money from his parents when he is battling with my mother. When he's not, he's comfortable enough leeching off her. The unfortunate thing is that my mother is not quite rich. She brings home a reasonable amount but not enough to maintain Rob's ostentatious lifestyle. She is a floor supervisor at our neighborhood grocery. Still, I never let it start to trouble me. I always aim to be as self-sufficient as I can. From the age of 14, I have refrained from asking my mother anything except for basics. Not even would I ask her to pay for those once I started working part-time. I really rely on her for shelter and food. I never ask her to buy me anything. That's all. I know that even expecting that is somewhat stupid, thus I do not expect her to do anything more for me. From the start, she has made it rather evident that she despises me. She never really treated me well even as a little child, and I always felt as though she didn't even want me. That impression developed into a belief as I grew older. At least earlier, I had my dad to have my back and stand up to my mother anytime she would get too mad at me. But I was on my own once he went away, and that is how it has been for the last few years. Things grew worse when Rob arrived, but I always comforted myself by reminding myself that shortly I would be off to college and wouldn't have to worry about any of this. That feels dark and improbable right now. I stayed in my room and did nothing for the 3 days my money was taken away because I was so depressed. We moved into our new house the day I found out all my money had been seized. I did all the required work, but I avoided talking to either of the two persons living with me. They seemed no worse for it either. My mother instructed me to get ready for the evening housewarming party on the third day. Having had my money snatched from me, I started yelling at her and told her I wouldn't be doing anything of the such. Their sole means of purchasing this mansion had been the money they pilfered from me. That particularly infuriated my mother. Referring to the fact she had raised me, she advised me to be glad for them now that we were finally living in our own house and not a rented property, and should just suck it up and let things go since I owe them for life anyhow. Which is not even logical since she was legally obligated to do it, and it is not like she gave me any great favor. Regarding the house, it was very large for the three of us anyway. I knew they had purchased this house specifically to wow everyone with their elegant address and large residence. That day I was quite agitated and chose to phone the parents of my father. Something I had never done before. It was complicated as my paternal grandparents had cut off contact with our family when my dad died. I suppose it hurt too much for them to keep in touch. They cut ties and we stopped having speaking terms. I'm not sure why, but I still had their numbers, so as a last resort I chose to phone them since my mother's grandparents, with whom I had a stronger relationship, were really somewhat neutral in this regard. I told my mother's parents about the day my money was taken, expecting they would speak with her and assist in resolving things for me. On the plus side, we would at last have a place of our own and wouldn't have to worry about rent. They just stated they were delighted my mother could purchase a new house. They advised me to hunt the silver lining. Their response seemed strange to me since, up to now, they had always understood me. Though they would silently support me, they never challenged my mother. This time was different and I couldn't make sense of it. I avoided them once more since I was also furious with them. That same day, when my mother advised me to swallow it, I made contact with my paternal grandparents in search of a different answer, one that may provide some future hope. It was only a gut feeling. Luckily, they answered the call, and I told them everything right away. I said I knew they were hurt and didn't want to keep in touch, but because this was an emergency and I thought my dad would have wanted them to help me should he still be alive. I told them my mother had grabbed all of my savings, which I had been saving for over a few years to cover college. I suddenly had no idea whether that was even possible anymore. After listening to me, my grandfather started something that baffled me. He informed me that evidently my dad left a college fund for me, so he didn't know why I had to save money separately. That news surprised me as my mother had never mentioned a college fund and I never asked her since I figured she hadn't saved any money for me. Knowing his death was very certain, I had totally forgotten what my dad might have done for me before he died. He passed really young, hence I assumed he might not have had time to arrange for me. I was astounded when my grandparents told me this. Furious and annoyed as well, I asked them whether they had any documentation or evidence I might use against my mother. They promised to hunt for something and call me later. I stayed in my room attempting to fit everything together for several hours. I came to see that Rob and my mother had clearly teamed together and pilfers my college money to purchase this mansion. From what I knew, my mother did not make enough money to buy the house. Regarding Rob, he had not worked anywhere for the past 3 months, thus I strongly questioned whether he could afford a residence of this kind. I would then report them to the police. I simply needed something to validate this. My grandparents finally contacted me after waiting for a few hours and supplied pictures of some documents my mother had actually signed saying she would use the money my father left her to pay for my college tuition and guarantee I had a comfortable life. She had done everything but guarantee that my life was comfortable, so I literally laughed out loud when I read it. She indeed went out of her way to make my life more unpleasant. Still, Mother had signed those papers, and it infuriated me that my grandparents had never mentioned it until after my dad died. They had simply left me behind, and my mother had not really been there for me. Though I believe it was all a show, my mother and grandparents tried to be there for me. My dad's parents were too consumed in their own loss to give me any thought. My grandparents gave a somewhat poor response when I inquired why they had never shown me these papers prior. At the time, I was too young anyhow. They told me they had sort of forgotten about it when my dad died. And once I grew older, we were not on speaking terms anymore, and it had escaped their thoughts since they too were getting older. I just let it go since I couldn't dispute that. Once I received the evidence, I phoned a friend whose dad was on the force and explained I needed his assistance. So in the evening, just as the housewarming party was getting underway, my friend's father arrived with another cop and a lawyer to arrest my mom and her fiancé. Their commitment had been obviously breached, and the problem was not only that promise breaking. My mother had essentially opened herself to a lawsuit by straying from what she had promised, therefore breaching the terms of the agreement she had signed all those years ago. My mother and Rob were finally arrested while I was showing the party attendees everything. That felt, in my life, the most vindicated I had ever experienced. Like several of their ex-co-workers and friends, almost everyone they had planned to wow was appalled as they watched them being revealed and hauled away under handcuffs. They continued to glare at me as if I had done something wrong, too proud and arrogant even then. When their daughter was being brought away in handcuffs, my mother's grandparents were also at the party and became quite irate and avoided talking to me following the event. I was by myself in the house once everyone had departed and had no idea what to do. Though they had been arrested, they would most likely be released on bail in a few hours, hence I was devastated. Furthermore, it would take months to prove everything even if I intended to charge them. Even then, should they be able to turn things around for themselves, they had a great possibility of being let off the hook. I wouldn't get back the money meant for me till then. There was just no knowing what would happen. I would still be losing out no matter what. The names on the deed were Rob's and Mom's, not mine, hence I cannot precisely sell the house either. I would have to battle the matter with a lawyer even if I wanted to formally compel her to sell the house and pay me the money. Now, since my friend and his father kindly offered to help to organize everything, I was free from concern about the expense of that. They reassured me I should not worry about it as they know what I'm going through and live close by. Now though, I'm not sure what to do. Worse, the few people I had on my side are no longer in contact with me. Because they think I have been unappreciative, my mother's grandparents expressed no desire in talking with me. They stated they knew I didn't get along with my mother, but sending her to jail for something like this didn't sit right with them given all she had done for me. Their lack of desire for any interaction with me truly set me off. I feel totally alone right now. Although right now I may have defeated Rob and my mother, over time I feel like I have lost far more. I simply feel very powerless right now and am not sure what to do. Am I the asshole for having my mother and her fiancé jailed for pilfering my cash to cover their new property purchase? Update 1. Hi there, out of the house Rob and my mother bought. I have moved. I reported them to the police 1 week ago, hence this is why. They were let go after 48 hours of custody and returned home. I opted to depart right away upon learning they would be returning as I wanted no confrontation. I stepped out when they came in as I had already packed my belongings. Though I didn't want to interact with them, they urged me to stop and chat. I left just as fast as I could. Having previously phoned a taxi, I got in and proceeded straight to my friend's house, where I have spent the past 3 days. For record's sake, this is the same friend whose dad assisted with the lawyer and arrest. Now the lawyer, the father of my friend, and I are collaborating daily to find out how to finish things up as fast as feasible. I am somewhat desperate at this moment, thus I am ready to get to a compromise. In a few days we have scheduled a meeting for their attorney, them, and a court-appointed mediator. The negotiations will show how things go. Should they reject my terms, we will have to bring this before court, which could take some time. Though I want it to be fair, I am trying my best to reach a resolution. I want the money I need to complete my schooling. For now, my friend's father has informed me I should expect financial aid from them. But I am reluctant to take financial support from anyone else since it seems odd. Regarding my grandparents, none has contacted me yet. Clearly, my father's parents and my mother's grandparents stopped talking to me straight after they emailed me pictures of the paperwork. Apart from that, we haven't interacted thus far. I have gathered those records from them personally to provide some concrete evidence as well. They were fairly indifferent about the whole situation even when I walked over to pick those records from them. Though they wished me the best, they did not offer to assist me or even extend an invitation for me to perhaps visit or perhaps interview. Since their behavior has been truly unusual for me to cope with, I really have no idea what's going on with them. So far, things have been somewhat disappointing. Nevertheless, I only hope I can overcome this fast so I may begin college. To be honest, right now I am only going by that. Of course, my friends are being rather helpful, which I truly appreciate because right now I have no family to talk of. Only these folks are really concerned about me. Update 2. Hi. Thus right now I'm not sure what to say as there has been an exciting development. What I discovered is terrible, hence I am literally shivering with rage. Once more, this is somewhat dubious. But my mother showed screenshots, thus I'm not sure what to believe. What happened was that today, just a few hours ago, my mother emailed me. There were just 2 days left until our mediation appointment. She said she really ought to talk to me. She couldn't get to me since I had blocked her everywhere else, but she opened a new email account and sent me something that truly screwed everything I knew to be true. I will hence not waste time. I will just get right to the point. Against me, my whole family plotted. Indeed, the reason all of my grandparents have been so strange throughout the process is that they have all been in on from the start. Not only had my mother squandered the money left to me by my father for herself, but all of them had taken their fair share and kept their lips closed in return. Because she had dirt on them, I at last know why my maternal grandparents were offended that I had reported my mother to the police and why they always seemed to be worried for me but never really stood up for me when it came to her. I also now understand why my paternal grandparents had never even bothered to notify me that these signed papers my mother had left existed until I asked them. My mother emailed me evidence of each of their having been in on this. She spoke with them when I was maybe 14 or 15 years old. She fortunately had all of this on file since they were stupid enough to have these email exchanges. She forwarded me screenshots of these emails. Since I got her arrested, my mother advised me it was only right that I bring these individuals into the matter as well, since it wouldn't be fair for her to be punished when they had all collaborated against me to hide the money and use it for themselves. My dad left a lot of money for me, and all these people, including his attorney, thought it would be better for them to keep it from me and spend it for themselves. This is still unbelievable to me. Over and over I've been reading that email, trying to make sense of it since it seems ridiculous that all these people, including my dad's own parents, were against me. It's really rather shockingly amazing. Their conscience had finally checked in and they had a change of heart, therefore the sole reason they had notified me about the papers my mother had signed and given me the evidence recently. When I phoned them to get aid, they chose to tell me the truth since they understood what they were doing was wrong. Although my mother and her parents had persuaded them not to tell me the truth as it would also bring them down, they had been intending to do this way earlier. Although they had assured me they would not come to tell me everything, if I ever asked they would most certainly be honest. All of this came to light when I inquired whether there was anything they could do to assist. They chose to offer me those records as evidence. Though it makes me happy they decided to assist me back then, it does not clear them. It also clarifies their strange and distant behavior even after helping me out, because they were guilty. They are truly ashamed, which they should be, yet they still cannot own what they did. Right now, though, my brain is simply not working as it should. I just know how to handle any of this. I have no idea what to believe in. Since it's so vast and practically driving me crazy, I haven't even told my friend about what I discovered. All at once I feel deceived, hurt and enraged. Right now I have no idea what to do with these feelings. Given this is a significant development and we will most certainly bring this up during the discussions, I clearly have to discuss this with my attorney. Forgetting that she would also be losing out on a lot of things because of this process, my mother tried to flip the tide against the ones who exposed her. She told me all of this, and I'm happy she did, as I believe I should have known that other than a small number of people, nobody has my back on this planet. I guess this is how it is since I cannot rely on anyone. Right now, the only thing left to do is inform my friend so he may notify his father. Then we can all get down with my lawyer and discuss what to do about this and forward direction. Still, I am most sure I will be attending college this year. I am not wavering. I have made my mind. I'm ready to ask the dad of a friend for assistance. Right now, I guess I will ask him to be a co-signer on my loan application. I am not asking him to pay my college tuition right now. Update 3. Hi. So we met with the mediator today and, as I mentioned, I very definitely mentioned what my mother had told me in the email. She basically came clean about everything she had done, and now she will have to pay for the money she and the rest of my family have pilfered from me. She also claimed, though, that some of the money went toward my upbringing, so we shouldn't hold it against her and shouldn't expect her to reimburse any of the sum taken. I do not buy it, though. My grandparents have to do as well. They stole not only that money, but also my hopes and aspirations. I want them to give it back to me so I may have a dignified life. I am not going to be reliant anymore. My friend's dad and my attorney told me that although these kinds of things are not unusual, they do not diminish the cunning and repulsive nature of it. Like me, they were enraged, and properly so. They promised me they would make sure I wouldn't have to rely on anybody else for money my entire life. After my dad died, the type of money they pilfers would have made me comfortable for every single year of my life. Although he had done all the necessary steps to ensure I led a contented life, my family found it unacceptable. They just were selfish, hence they had to be taken away from me. Not that will fly with me anymore. After our conversation, my attorney and I agreed we were going for the throat. Particularly on my dime, there is no need for us to back off and let them have themselves. Though things were somewhat harsh there, one thing is certain. We will be meeting once more, and this time my grandparents, all of them, will be present, as obviously they have also been involved in this. Things might go to court, but I'm going to deal with a student loan till then. I will ensure I get my justice. More than justice, I have to retrieve from them money taken from me. Since the money was meant for me just and nobody else, all of them had to reimburse me. Although my mother agreed differently, they also betrayed their pledge to my father, to keep me safe and content. I never want to see them once more since they are all failures. I'm 30F, wed to Brian, 32M, a really great man. At least until lately, our 7 years together have been peaceful. We have been married for 5 and life has been lovely. My family has always been somewhat complicated. When I was 10 years old, my parents split. My mother fled, and since then we have not spoken at all. When I was 15, my dad, 55M, drew Diane, 50F. She entered the family with her 28F daughter Melissa. Mostly since Melissa was constantly envious of me, we were never close. She simply made matters worse as she disliked my wonderful relationship with my dad, who has always preferred me. Melissa has always shown a little entitlement and spoiling. Diane cuddles her. She has always sided with Melissa no matter how often there has been dispute or argument. Although my dad attempts to remain impartial, it is clear he is closer to me and has caused many issues over the years. Melissa appears to be carrying this chip on her shoulder on the way our dad treats us differently. To complicate matters, Diane and my dad's son Peter, 14M, is my half-brother. Though the family relationships are equally complex, he is a wonderful child. Though Melissa is an adult now and should be able to manage things better, her dad loves him too, and Melissa always feels that she has been pushed to the side. Still, I am a successful business owner, which has simply accentuated the distance separating Melissa from me. She has always been jealous of my connection with our dad and my job. She is a low-level marketing assistant who regularly laments how unfair life is, how she does not have the same chances, etc. I have tried to be encouraging, but it is difficult when she is constantly negative and seeks means of dragging me down. She recently began dating James, 35M, a decent-looking man, but now I'm doubting everything. Even from our early years, Melissa and I never truly got along. Though I suppose it's not unusual for step-siblings to experience some conflict, ours felt to be on a different level. Melissa obviously objected to me from the beginning because of the relationship I had with our dad. She always considered me as competition, hence it was aggravating as I actually wanted a sisterly relationship with her. But it became abundantly evident over time that this was not going to happen. The favoritism of my dad proved unhelpful. He has never hesitated to share with anyone who would listen. He has always been pleased with my successes. Melissa, on the other hand, seemed to be more of a letdown in his eyes, which widened our gulf. Every time something went wrong in her life, she would find a way to point the finger at me or say I had it simpler since our dad loved me more. To be very honest, it was draining. And Diane? No matter what, Melissa's constant cheerleader has been her. Diane would defend Melissa even if she obviously made mistakes. Diane and my dad have had a lot of conflict as well, but he has never been one to squarely face it. To my annoyance, he simply aims to maintain peace, which sometimes means allowing things to lapse. Melissa's jealousy evolved over years into something more poisonous. She usually attempts to minimize my achievements as she has never been happy about any of them. She hardly noticed it when I married Brian and focused entirely on how unfair it was and how alone she was. She laughed at my company when I first started it, stating I only got where I am due to our dad's support. She seems unable to accept my success or happiness, which makes any type of meaningful connection unattainable for us. Notwithstanding all this, I have attempted to keep the peace. I try to include her in activities, hoping it would strengthen our relationship. I do not go out of my way to rub her triumphs in her face. Still, it's never enough. She finds a means to turn whatever I do into something negative no matter what. Since I desire things could be different, it's draining and truly upsetting. My battle with infertility has been among the most agonizing events in my life. Brian and I resolved 3 years ago that we were ready to begin a family. Though our enthusiasm and optimism were high, things didn't go as expected. We visited a reproductive doctor following a year of trying without success, and there we received the news that I have a disorder severely impairing spontaneous conception. Nothing worked. Medications, therapies, even IVF that we tried. Every failed effort felt like a kick to the belly and severely affected both of us emotionally. Particularly since we had always imagined a large family, we were heartbroken. Our relationship has suffered much from it. There were times when I felt totally hopeless and the tension and disappointment were intolerable. Melissa's family is among those who know about our hardships. They were all really encouraging. Though he has never been very good with emotional matters, my dad attempted to be there for me in his own manner. Diane offered to assist with all we needed and was more involved. Melissa first appeared to be empathetic, but that was fleeting. She began making tiny digs and remarks with great depth not long ago. She once asked me casually how fortunate I was to be able to concentrate on my profession free from child responsibility. Especially from someone who understood how much I wanted to be a mother, it burned so badly. She seemed to be enjoying my suffering, which more than I could express hurts. Dealing with infertility is difficult enough without someone in your own family rubbing slaves in the wound. Almost as if she were mocking me, Melissa would also mention her own aspirations for children one day. She would discuss how simple she would find it when the time came, how she would have no trouble getting pregnant, and how she was in no hurry as she had all the time in the world. Knowing what I was going through, I couldn't understand why she would say such things, which were terrible. To be honest, Melissa has always been rather the drama queen. She is single, a low-level marketing assistant, and she regularly grumbles about how her life has not turned out the way she intended. She has always been the kind of person that seeks attention, even if it means blatantly falsifying stories or exaggerating to get it. I can't count the times she has pretended to be unwell. Only the next day when something exciting comes up she suddenly recovers. She recently began seeing James, 35M, and initially I thought it would be great for her. Exactly what Melissa needs. Kind, successful, grounded. He seemed to be a decent man. But as the relationship developed, I began to see some warning signals. Melissa has been pushing James to relocate more quickly than he is comfortable with, first of all. Given her past of wanting things for the wrong reasons, her discussion of marriage and children after just a few months of dating seems a tad hurried. Melissa has always had a great need to stay up with me, more like to surpass me. She seems to be unhappy only until she feels as though she is one-upping me in some form. Whether it's with our professions, our relationships, or now considering a family, I have seen it time and time again. It's draining. At one point, I'm not sure what more I could do to maintain calm. She has also been known to embellish events seeking compassion. She would make up stories about how harsh her professors were or pretend to have injuries to get out of gym class when she was younger. It's always something, and today it looks like that behavior has persisted into her adult life. She talks endlessly about how demanding her work is, how she feels underappreciated, and how everyone is out to get her. Particularly when you know someone is not being really honest, it can be difficult to sympathize with someone who is constantly acting the victim. James strikes me as a fine man, but I worry about him becoming sucked into Melissa's web. Unlike us, he doesn't know her, hence I worry he could not see the warning signals until it's too late. Still, I'm not very inclined to meddle at the same time. I simply hope things don't spiral out of hand for Melissa's sake as much as for his. Imagine yourself last weekend, fast forward. Celebrating our 5th wedding anniversary, Brian and I also had an opportunity to let others know my company is growing. We agreed to have a large dinner party inviting close relatives, friends, and some business contacts. Particularly considering all Brian and I have gone through lately, I wanted tonight to be memorable. I spent weeks organizing every element, selecting the ideal cuisine, contracting a professional catering company, and even installing some subdued CCTV cameras for security needs. We just had a couple break-ins in the area, hence I wanted not to take any chances. Everything was supposed to be flawless, and I was eager to tell everyone we know our great news. My parents, Diane, Melissa, Peter, and a handful of our closest friends and business colleagues were on the guest list. Given our past, I was a little dubious about inviting Melissa, but I decided it was the proper thing to do. Moreover, I considered perhaps this would be a chance for us to at last get along, even for one evening. The day the party was scheduled arrived, and I wanted things to go without a hitch so everyone might enjoy themselves. Together, Brian and I checked to ensure every element was flawless. The caterers came early, and we laid a lovely table including candles and flowers. I even bought some pricey wine knowing our visitors would enjoy it. Everyone arriving felt as though all the effort had paid off. Starting with champagne and appetizers, we kicked things off and generally everyone seemed to be having fun. Melissa was also being quite friendly, which I interpreted as encouraging. Thinking perhaps, just maybe, things were looking good, I began to unwind and really appreciate the evening. Until dessert, everything was running perfectly. The caterers presented a beautiful cake, and we were about to make our major business expansion news when Melissa abruptly got up. She blurted out that she had some news of her own instead of the toast or anything I had assumed she would bring. Glancing around the room with this haughtiness, she declared, "I'm pregnant, 3 months along. I pledge you could have heard a pin drop." Everyone, including her boyfriend James, who seemed totally blindsided, was shocked. He glanced at her as though he cannot believe what he was hearing. The range of feelings I experienced at that moment, shock, hurt, anger, all of which struck me simultaneously, is difficult for me to even start to explain. Though I have always wanted to make that kind of announcement myself, given all Brian and I have gone through with infertility, I realized that time might never happen. And here was Melissa, grabbing our evening to deliver her bombshell, knowing of my difficulties. Some of our visitors had pitying stares, and that made me wish to vanish. Still, I kept my cool rather than setting out a scene. Though I was dying within, I smiled broadly and complimented her. Although Brian's hand under the table allowed me to relax, I knew he was equally unhappy as I was. Originally scheduled this evening to honor our successes, today it became a celebration of Melissa's pregnancy. I said my congrats, then excused myself and vanished to the bathroom to cool off. I needed 1 minute to collect my ideas and stop the tears from flowing. She stole it entirely from us. It was meant to be our night. Given what we have gone through, I found it incomprehensible why she would act so carelessly. Still, this was Melissa, always seeking to be the center of attention, regardless of cost. Brian and I were still contemplating what had transpired early the next morning. We tried to concentrate on the positives, that is, the nice comments from our friends and the way the business news had been received. But it was difficult to move past the hurt and irritation. Though I hadn't expected to hear from Melissa very soon, there was a loud bang at the door as we were seated for breakfast. When I opened it, Melissa was standing there glaringly angry. Hurrying into the living room, she passed me without waiting. She started a frenzy before I could ask what was going on, charging me for spiking the food at the party to make her sick. She insisted she had been throwing up all night and morning and felt I had done something out of jealousy over her pregnancy. I was totally surprised. Spiking the food? What I was listening to astounded me. She was told that was absurd, that we had professionally catered meals, and that there was no way anything could have been changed. She wouldn't pay attention though. She said that I had to have done something and insisted on seeing the party CCTV footage to clear my name. Melissa was not having it when Brian entered the room trying to cool her down. She was yelling, screaming all kinds of crazy charges, and really I had no idea what to say. That she would even consider me capable of something so sinister infuriated and wounded me. The whole matter is becoming rapidly more dangerous. Should I fail to present Melissa the tape right then and there, Melissa threatened to call the police and press charges. She was behaving totally illogically, and I had no idea what to do. Though another part of me wanted to show her the film merely to shut her down and establish I had done nothing wrong, part of me wanted to throw her out of the house. She wasn't having it when Brian tried to reason with her, saying that perhaps she was simply suffering morning sickness. Nothing we said would make her change her mind. She was sure I had done anything to compromise her pregnancy. Just wanted it to stop. I felt as though I was in some kind of twisted dream. A few more minutes of yelling and accusations later, I at last consented to show her the CCTV film. I thought that was the only approach to persuade her to cool off and leave our peace intact. I called up the recordings from the previous evening and Brian and I guided her to the room housing the film. I kept looking at Melissa as we watched the video, expecting for her to see how ludicrous her charges were. The film captured everything: guests arriving, supper being presented, and everyone having fun. Nothing out of the usual, no odd behavior, and most definitely no proof I had touched the food. Melissa doubled down nevertheless, instead of retreating. She began dissecting every minute detail in the video, alleging that certain attendees appeared uneasy or that perhaps the caterers had done at my request was wrong. She was clearly not going to let this go. She was grabbing at straws. She then turned to me out of nowhere and declared, if I didn't confess to what I'd done, she would take this to the next level. She was discussing urgent charges, visiting law enforcement, and even suing me for what she claimed to have been an attempt to damage her unborn child. Never had I seen her like this before. So enraged, so resolved to have me the villain in her narrative. When Brian tried to step in once more, implying that Melissa might be simply overwhelmed with all that was happening in her life, She was not having it. She was dead focused on having me pay for something I had not even done. I didn't understand why she seemed to be on a mission to ruin me. I became stuck. She would assume I was hiding something if I hadn't shown her the footage, but even with it, she wasn't happy. I had no idea what else I could do to prove my innocence, and the idea of her dragging this out in front of courts or the police horrified me. I simply wanted the whole thing to stop. I was totally lost. I'm thus left wondering, Reddit, how I should address this. Should I keep trying to reason with Melissa, or should I enable her to forward with her threats and handle the consequences? All of this baffles and hurts me greatly. I have no idea what to do. Update 1. Hey Reddit, thanks for the guidance and encouragement. Things have turned wild, and I have to tell what happened next. I chose to attentively check the CCTV footage following Melissa's tantrum to be sure I had not missed anything. Though I expected nothing, I was driven to clear my name and put this entire disaster behind me. Something struck my eye as I was viewing the footage. James, Melissa's boyfriend, stood close to the drink table during the party. It was delicate, but when Melissa turned away, I saw him slide something into her drink. What the fuck was happening? Several times I watched the video to be sure I wasn't seeing things, but it was obvious. James had clearly placed something in her drink. I started to shock. What had he done? Explain why. Though I knew I had to face him about it, I also realized this would cause even more upheaval. I requested James to visit when I phoned him. Though he sounded tense, he agreed. I wasted no time when he got here. Showing him the video, I insisted on an explanation. At first he tried to deny it. But when he realized there was no going around it, he finally admitted. James owned up to having tainted Melissa's drink with Plan B. She had been pressuring him to have a baby, he said, and he wasn't ready for that kind of dedication. Melissa reportedly had been lying to him about using birth control, and he freaked out upon learning of it. In a flash of fear, he dropped the pill into her drink, trying to stop the pregnancy without facing her squarely. I said nothing at all. Her boyfriend drugged her to stop her from becoming pregnant. For actual? James confessed, and I had no idea what to do going forward. Furious, outraged, and even a little afraid of what this would imply for all the people involved. Though I knew it would destroy Melissa, I realized I couldn't keep this to myself. She deserved the truth. I urged Melissa to come over when I phoned her. She was still furious when she got there, most likely anticipating another argument about the meal. But her face went white when I told her what James had done. She first just stared shocked at me without saying anything. She first tried to dispute it, claiming I must have somehow edited the recording when I showed her the video. But the data was clearly there, and finally she had to confront reality. She moved from denial to rage when it sank her at last. She began yelling at James, calling him every name found in a book. She was tossing stuff and blaming him for destroying her life, so it was a full-fledged tantrum. Then in the middle of her tirade, she blurted out something even more startling. She acknowledged her lying about her pregnancy. Fearful James was about to leave, she claimed she made up the pregnancy to try to trap him back into her house. She reasoned that he would have to commit totally if he thought she was expecting his child. I stood absolutely stunned. Here I was believing she was really pregnant and that she had told me at my party out of some sick craving for attention, but it was all a lie, a hopeless, pitiful attempt to control James. And now her lie had exploded in front of her in the worst conceivable manner. Then Melissa turned on me and started accusing me of destroying everything. She said she could have maintained the lie and things would have been better if I hadn't shown her the video. It still astounded me. Even after all she had done, she was still working to twist events to make me the bad guy. My dad and Diane arrived in the thick of this turmoil as if things couldn't get bad. Melissa apparently had called them on her way over, screaming about how I was out to get her, so they came over to cool things up. Still, they strolled in exactly as Melissa was heading off on James. Things were anarchy. Diane launched Melissa's defense right away, asking what I had done to irritate her daughter. Diane would not hear me trying to explain everything. James spiking the drink. Melissa lying about the pregnancy. Saying I had always been jealous and was only searching for a means to destroy Melissa's life. She accused me of setting her up. My dad, on the other hand, first said nothing. After seeing the tape and listening to James, he turned to Melissa with an expression I had never seen before. Not even does disappointment start to cover it. She had done, lying about something as significant as a pregnancy, controlling everyone around her, and then turning on me for revealing the truth, something he couldn't believe. My dad backed me in a dispute with Melissa for the first time. He advised her to accept accountability for her behavior as what she did was unacceptable. Of course, Melissa did not respond particularly well. She began to cry, claiming that she is always the one blamed while I am treated like the golden kid and that no one else ever supports her. Diane took great offense at my dad for not standing up for Melissa. She charged him with deserting their family and enabling me to turn him against them. With Melissa screaming in the background, the whole event descended into a protracted quarrel between my dad and Diane. It was a horrible catastrophe. All I wanted was everyone to go. They finally did. Melissa was still sobbing and Diane glared at me like I was the devil when my dad advised Melissa and Diane to head home and cool off. I was utterly exhausted. All I wanted was a decent anniversary party and business news, and suddenly this catastrophe had my family in disarray. Right now I'm at a complete loss, hence I could really appreciate some guidance on how to handle this. Update 2. Good Reddit, I'm back offering more updates. Since that turbulent day, things have become convoluted, and I am still trying to make sense of it all. Word got around among our relatives and friends once the dust settled from the major disclosure on James spiking Melissa's drink. Though you know how these things go, people talk, I did not want it. Concerned about the situation, business associates and a few close friends contacted me. While some were encouraging, others seemed concerned about how this mistake may damage my company's standing. Given something as serious as accusations of spiking cocktails and lying about a pregnancy, I suppose that makes sense. No one wants to be connected with scandal. Though within I was slightly panicking, I told them everything was under control. Having this drama leak into my work life is the last thing I need. Regarding Melissa, her standing has suffered greatly. Those who attended the party, especially those who personally heard her announcement, are now challenging all she says. She has been avoiding social media, which is unusual for her. Some of her shared acquaintances have also distanced themselves. She enjoys the attention normally, but right now it seems as though she is hiding. Regarding family dynamics, things have become even more convoluted. James split from Melissa soon after everything became clear. Unable to handle the aftermath, he was naturally enraged over being controlled. Naturally, Melissa blames me for the breakup. She says they would still be together if I hadn't showed her the film. Classic Melissa, dodging accountability instead of assigning guilt. About the whole thing, my dad is truly conflicted. Though Melissa's behavior calls for a soft spot for him usually, this time he seems to be questioning it. I never would have imagined him saying that, but he has been discussing severing relations with her. It has severely damaged his relationship with Diane, who is still protecting Melissa. Things between them are, at least, tense, and I worry it may cause further major problems in their marriage. Given all that has transpired, I have been giving legal action against James great thought. Though it was under Plan B, what he did, spiking Melissa's drink, was utterly out of line. Speaking with a lawyer, they advised me that things may get complicated even though they stated I have a case should I wish to file charges. Given the whole affair has gone public, James might countersue for slander, particularly now. It's a lot to consider and I'm not sure if the extra stress is worth it. Melissa has been flitting about threats of a lawsuit against me for emotional suffering at the same time. She is claiming great mental trauma from my showing of the CCTV footage and revealing of her lies. Although it's ridiculous, the attorney encouraged me to treat it seriously should she choose to act. If it comes to a countersuit, we are looking at possibilities. But to be honest, the thought of attending court over this makes me ill. I simply want this dream to fade. To aggravate things, Diane is entirely on Melissa's side. Just ridiculous is her insistence on my dad acting legally against me. Though it's driving a gulf between him and Diane, my dad is happily not entertained by that thought. More frequently staying at our house, he is trying to avoid the stress at home. Though I hate to see him trapped in the middle, I have no idea how to correct it. I am currently attempting to concentrate on safeguarding my company and myself. Just in case things get more intense, I have added more security devices at home and at the office. I have also begun recording everything, every contact, every threat. So I have evidence should this go before court. Although it seems overkill, I would much prefer to be safe than regret. Edit 1. To try to save what remains of our family, my dad advised family therapy. He is eager to mend things with Diane and, I believe, still harboring hope that we may somehow mend our connection with Melissa. Though I realized how much the concept meant to him, I wasn't excited about it. I consented nevertheless. Diane grudgingly consented as well, although Melissa first flatly objected. She finally agreed to one session, simply to hear everyone out, after some persuasion though. The session turned out clearly as a fiasco. The therapist tried to mediate, but Melissa was antagonistic from the time we arrived. She spent much of the time portraying the victim, blaming me for destroying her life and asserting that I had always been envious of her. She maintained that James and her would be happy and planning their future together if I hadn't intervened. It was all about how I had exposed her and about how unfair it was that she was the one suffering as a result. Diane was not improved either. She blamed me for boiling the pot and generating all this turmoil, shielding Melissa at every turn. She even had the gall to advise me to have handled things privately and kept silent about the CCTV evidence to spare Melissa from humiliation. What I was hearing astounded me. I was supposed to simply let Melissa carry on with her lies and manipulation to keep the peace. Although my dad attempted to be impartial, he once lost his cool. Melissa was advised by him to own her behavior and cease attributing her troubles to others. Diane interpreted that as a betrayal, and the two of them descended into a shouting war. The therapist sought control, but it was too late. Melissa bolted, screaming that she was done with all of us, and Diane trailed her out. My dad was seated there looking disappointed at the end of the session. He said he didn't know what else to do and that perhaps it was time to realize things wouldn't get better. He apologized to me. Seeing him so distraught broke my heart and made me understand that this could be beyond safe. For Melissa, things have only gotten worse following the catastrophic therapy session. She lost her job, according to what I heard via common friends. She seems to have had unpredictable behavior, missing work or arriving late. At last her manager had enough and let her leave. Though I'm not surprised, it is nevertheless depressing to see her descend this way. She has also been disseminating online rumors about me. She has been tweeting accusing me of ruining her life and turning our family against her. She even made ludicrous hints suggesting I edited the footage to make James seem bad. Although most people who know the whole truth are not purchasing it, some seem to be devouring it. It hurts, and it makes me wonder whether I should have kept things private even though I know that would have only served to hasten the unavoidable. My dad is bordering on insane with concern. Melissa has not responded when he tried getting in touch. Naturally upset with him for not supporting Melissa more, Diane blames him for driving her away. Their marriage might not survive this. Things between them are precariously hanging. Diane's hard set against my dad's even talking about stopping Melissa's financial support, expecting it will drive her to get her life together. I am at the very end of it. Though it's not that easy, I have thought about totally severing relations to Melissa. She is still family, and despite all, I find myself thinking about her always. I cannot, however, continue to let her pull everyone else down. I have begun researching legal choices to guard against the falsehoods she is disseminating online. Though my attorney is counseled to write a cease and desist letter, I am unsure. Though I can't allow her to keep lying about me, I also don't want to let things get much more escalated. Update 3. 6 months later. Hey Reddit. After everything fell apart 6 months ago, I at last have some excellent news to report. Following all the tension, turmoil, and emotional roller coasters, something wonderful happened. I discovered I'm pregnant. And it occurred organically, against all chances, not through IVF or any other procedure. Though Brian and I are over the moon, given everything that has transpired with Melissa, we have been careful about who we inform. We agreed to keep it under wraps until I reached into my second trimester. We at last had something to celebrate after years of heartache and disappointment, but concurrently we harbored an underlying anxiety about Melissa's reaction should she find out. Since the whole episode with James, she has been out of control. The last thing we wanted was for her to find a means of ruining this for us too. We have kept the pregnancy under wraps, only informing a small number of close friends and intimate relatives. When we told Dad, he was overjoyed and has been quite helpful. Diane, on the other hand, responded somewhat inconsistently. She seemed a little aloof as well as pleased for us. She still finds it difficult to deal with everything that transpired with Melissa, so it is influencing her attitude to my news. Though there is conflict, Brian and I are emphasizing the good. We have begun organizing the nursery and creating baby arrival plans. At last, being in this place after all we have gone through relieves us. Though I'm trying to be hopeful, I can't say the anxiety of anything going wrong has totally vanished. We knew it would be difficult as we neared the time to tell the rest of the family about the pregnancy. We made a conscious choice not to invite Melissa, even though we wanted to arrange a small private party with just our closest family members, my dad, Diane, Peter, and some friends. We felt leaving her out of it was safer and less taxing after all that had transpired. The day of the conference arrived and I felt both anxious and thrilled. After everyone had finished our modest supper, Brian and I got up to make our announcement. As I told everyone the news, my heart was pounding, but the response was just what we could have asked for. Peter was delighted at the prospect of being an uncle, while my dad was ecstatic and leaped to hug us both. Though I could see she was holding back a little, even Diane grinned and congratulated us despite her recent distancing. Diane inquired whether we had told Melissa, and there was a period of awkwardness following the initial enthusiasm. Everyone in the room was clearly tense, waiting for my response. We hadn't told her yet, I said, and with everything that has transpired, we weren't sure how to approach it. Diane appeared torn while my dad nodded in comprehension. She pulled back, most likely thinking it wasn't the proper time, even though I wanted her to offer Melissa over. With everyone toasting to the new family addition, we ended the evening on a positive note. It seemed like a turning point, as though perhaps we were at last past all the drama and suffering. The news got out the following day. Although we hadn't yet put anything on social media, in our family word of mouth travels quickly. Not long after, I began receiving texts from friends and relatives all wishing well. I knew it was just a matter of time before Melissa found out, even as I was savoring the optimism and trying to keep focused on the happiness of the moment. Later on that evening, sure enough, my dad called. He seemed tense and mentioned Melissa had learned about the pregnancy through common connections. She was enraged, he said, outraged that we hadn't informed her straight and that she had to learn through someone else. He cautioned me that she might show up at our place. He was right. Melissa showed up at our house that very night, exactly as my dad had cautioned. As Brian and I were relaxing from the day and savoring a quiet moment together, we heard pounding on the front door. I recognized it even before I unlocked the door. Melissa looked angry, almost unhinged as I let her in. She launched her tirade without wasting any time. She stated it was obvious I was trying to eradicate her from the family and accused me of purposefully keeping her off the announcement. She continued on about how unjust it was, how she had gone through so much, and how I was rubbing my pregnancy in her face. She wasn't having any of it when I attempted to remain cool and explain that we had kept the pregnancy under wraps for a purpose and that we were going to inform her once we were ready. She persisted in saying that I had done this to pay her back off for what James had done. Sadly, she was essentially rewriting history to present herself as the victim, therefore painting a picture of nothing new. The exchange descended rapidly into a yelling match. As the baby's aunt, she insisted she had a right to be involved and asked to be a part of her life. But considering all that has happened, Brian and I had already decided to create some strict limits. We explained to her that although we wouldn't cut her off entirely, we wanted time and space to concentrate on our new family free from continual upheaval. She finally lost it entirely at that. Melissa began yelling that we were isolating her, that we were attempting to take away the only family she had left, and that she would make our lives terrible if we allowed her to participate. Brian intervened, reminding her she should go and that should she keep threatening us, we would discuss obtaining a restraining order. She hurled herself and slammed the door behind her. Having to threaten legal action against my own stepsister merely to preserve the peace in my family astounded me. Melissa's reaction made Brian and I realize we had to make some difficult choices. We filled my dad in on what had transpired when we spoke. Though I could see he was very depressed by the whole situation, he was not surprised. Although he has always strived to keep the family together, he also acknowledged that this time things had gone too far. My dad totally approved of our choice to impose limits on Melissa. He even advised us to think about temporarily cutting off our interaction with her until she receives the care she obviously requires. Diane, though, told a different tale. She contacted me, obviously disturbed when she learned what had transpired, saying Melissa was only going through a difficult period and that cutting her off would only make things worse. She begged me to rethink. Diane didn't seem to get my explanation, that we were merely establishing limits for our own sanity rather than cutting her off entirely. She insisted that families should stick together no matter what, but I believe she is in denial about the harm Melissa's behavior has caused. Ultimately, Brian and I agreed to carry out our strategy. Melissa is only involved in our life when absolutely required. We are keeping minimum touch with her. At our house, we have also added more security devices in case she attempts another wild pull-off. Though I wanted things to be, I have to give my expanding family's safety and well-being top priority. Regarding my dad and Diane, their relationship is now considerably more tense. My dad has been spending more time away from home, lodging with friends or visiting our house. Diane is still trying to keep everything together, but I can tell the tension is wearing her down as well. Though I'm not sure what will happen with them, I hope they can sort things out without totally separating themselves. Right now, I'm mostly concentrating on my pregnancy and getting ready for our baby to arrive. Though it's difficult when it feels like everything is precariously balanced, I'm trying to remain upbeat and keep the drama at a distance. I simply want to savor this period without thinking about the next family catastrophe just waiting around. Update 4. 1 year later. Hey Reddit. It's been a year since my previous update, and I'm glad life has turned around much needed. A few months back, Brian and I welcomed a healthy baby daughter into the world. Emily is absolutely flawless, we called her. Given all the tension I had during my pregnancy, it was great relief when the birth went well and Emily and I were both healthy. Brian has been a really outstanding parent. He is hands-on with everything from late-night feeds to diaper changes and utterly smitten with Emily. It has deepened our relationship even more, and I would most want to have him at my side. About the rest of the family, things have been challenging but under control. With the continuous drama involving Melissa and Diane, my dad has been a loving grandpa visiting our house practically daily to see Emily. Diane has been trying to be more involved, to her credit. She's been trying to be a good grandma, and I'm trying to meet her halfway to help to keep the peace even if there is still some friction between us. Turning to Melissa's issue. Following the conflict a year ago, we stayed away as scheduled. Melissa first found it difficult. She kept snapping out on social media and made a few more attempts to get up unannounced. But some months ago something changed. Unbelievably, Diane persuaded Melissa to begin treatment. Though I had low expectations from it, Melissa seems to be at last making some development. My dad claims Melissa has been routinely attending treatment and has even begun to admit some of her prior actions. She contacted me a few weeks ago to really apologize rather than to assign blame or accusations. Though it was a brief note, it seemed honest. She said she was working on herself and realized she had been acting out of envy and hurt. She stated she hoped we might have a relationship eventually, even if it would take time, not asking for forgiveness. Though I was careful to reply, finally I responded briefly thanking her for getting in touch. I told her I'm willing to restore our connection, but it would have to be slow and under my terms. She has thus so far shown respect, more than I would have expected. Melissa seems to be doing well generally and also started a new career. She's not returning to her former self, but she is displaying maturity that I really never would have expected. Though still on guard, I am gently hopeful. Though I'm not ready to let her back into my life completely and trust won't be established overnight, I'm hoping this could be the beginning of something wonderful. I suppose that is it. I appreciate all of your support and counsel throughout the past year. Though it's been an unusual road, I'm glad to have somewhere to share it all. If something noteworthy occurs, I will keep you informed. But for now I'm simply looking forward to savoring life with my small family and seeing where the future leads us.